Good morning, everybody. I hope you all had a great weekend. My guest today is Greg Putnam. He's a former Navy SEAL and current owner of Little Belt Cattle Company, Cattle Co., north of Bozeman, Montana. Now, you might ask yourself, did they call it Little Belt because he's so tiny? No, they didn't. Although he is very wee, if you know what I mean. They called it that because that's the mountain range that's right there. Greg has been on before. God damn. So his career mostly was in the SDVs, SEAL Delivery Vehicles. And I'm going to be honest with you, they terrified me because I didn't really know what they did other than spend an ungodly amount of time in the water, far longer than I would ever want to spend. So any time that I've ever seen one, and there's only been one time that I've seen it for real, I went in the other direction because I just didn't want to get put inside of it. He opens with a story about perhaps exactly why that is the case. So, episode 381 with former Navy SEAL, current businessman, Greg Putnam. Now, before we dive in, let me pay the bills. Today's episode is brought to you by Black Rifle Coffee. That's right. You know they've been a part of this podcast for years now. They help me bring this podcast to everyone for free. I've been a fan of the brand, a part of the brand for quite some time now. I own one of their coffee shops up here in Montana, currently the only one in Montana, and it's been a hell of a ride. But today, let's talk about their website. So let's head over there right now. First thing I'm looking at, Elixir. I don't know how to say this. Vitae? I don't know. Its origin is from Mexico. The region is... I'm not even going to try to say that. I feel like I know how to say that, but I'm not going to embarrass myself further. This is an example of one of the bags of coffee that you can get if you join the ECS, the exclusive coffee subscription. It's going to be one bag a month. Now, if that's not enough for you, don't worry. If I just scroll down here, all these other bags, you can get those on the regular coffee subscription as well. You don't have to limit yourself to just the ECS. You could do the normal coffee subscription as well. They have a full selection of everything that you could need if you're a coffee lover or just a fan of the brand. You could fly the flag metaphorically, hats, t-shirts. I think I've seen them do some shorts before as well, not currently though. Mugs, things to make coffee in, things to take coffee on the go, all of those things. They also have energy drinks, which I'll be the first to admit, I'm not a fan of energy drinks, but we sell these in the coffee shop and they are flying. So for people who like energy drinks, I highly recommend you check them out. 4 flavors, Black Rifle energy that comes in Freedom Punch, Wild Frost, Ranger Berry, and Project Mango. Really a smattering there, covering a lot of it. They have a loyalty program. You can join their email campaign, all of those things. I also recommend you check out their apparel section. Spend a good amount of time on there. They make some amazing designs. Everybody knows why I like this brand. One, I like the people. I like what they stand for. And it's just a part of my life at this point. Let's get into the show. After you go over to www.blackriflecoffee.com. Let's go.
Okay, got the red smoke. Gun run, north or south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke. Okay, copy, west of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now. Come on with it, baby, give it to me, I need it. Get cleared hot. Copy, cleared hot.
I like that you brought a single breath mint.
Yeah, just in case. Did you want one? I actually have more. I just didn't want to be digging in my pocket.
No, I'm just curious why. Oh, you have 3. Perfect. I thought it was better when it was just there by itself.
Well, you like the one? Let's put these over here.
Dude, I know where we have to start. How does it feel to be partnered with an out-of-state billionaire who bought his way into Montana to try to influence national level elections? Not that any of what I just said is true.
Sure.
But you guys had to deal with that. I was fascinated to hear, because I know during the election cycle, and some people have said to me, you should run for office, to which I can't say fast enough, no thank you. That's not actually how I respond. I use much more colorful language. One of the main reasons why is I can't fathom why anybody would want to put their family through that. The shit that they say, the stuff that it seems like they make up, it seems like everything is fair game. There's no rules. And what I opened with was obviously a joke, but you're partnered with Tim Sheehy, who the narrative was out-of-stater, no ties to Montana. It literally was trying to, buy an election in a state that he thought he could swing. And I think you and I had texted one time in between. You're like, God damn it!
I think I actually saw you in Vegas, and I was just like, and, you always have like good sound advice, and I was just like, and we were just kind of talking about it. But number one, how's it feel? It feels great, right? It feels great now that it's over.
Fuck that part. Let's talk about the part where it didn't feel great.
Yes. And so a couple things there. Number one, people, I don't think, realize how long these cycles actually are. So
you mean the election cycles?
The election cycles. So, and keep in mind, this is just all my personal, I don't work for the campaign, didn't work for the campaign, and am not a paid spokesman for them. I'm just going to talk about like what was my experience as a friend, as a business partner, and that's about all I can do. So Tim started that campaign about 18 months prior to the actual election. So
why?
Because he had no name.
No. I mean, why did he want to do it?
Oh, got it. That's a great question. If you actually think about it, and for all the attacks that they sent, his way, at the end of the day, he didn't have to do it. He could have just taken his successes and not done really anything at that point,
Continued
right?
being successful and growing businesses.
Correct. Yeah. And he didn't, there was no, he did not have to go back into service, right? And I'll say, like, honestly, like, Tim is like a very like service driven person. I think from obviously like a young age, he went into the military at 18. It's something that's been important to him. He actually is somebody that's extremely, community driven. And I would say that's, from a country, from this state, from military, from all the people he's hired, et cetera. Honestly, I think the bench in Montana at the time was fairly weak. They'd already ran people against Tester. They did not do very well. And honestly, they needed somebody, that had, what Tim brought to the table. And I think they came to him with, kind of with this ask. I will say this. I highly doubt they gave him the full read in. Like,
I was going to ask what the difference was between what he likely thought it was going to be and then what it was, which is you speaking for him a little bit, but I know you guys are friends, so you probably got at least a little bit of window dressing.
Well, I got to watch it too, right?
Yeah.
And so what you ultimately watched happen was a systematic attack at very high levels with tons of funding. This number may not be 100% accurate, but like what I was told at one point, it was $1 million a week in negative campaign ads directed at making Tim look like a terrible person.
I feel like 2/3 of those landed directly on my cell phone.
Yes, or in your mail, or on your YouTube, or on the TV. Like, you couldn't go anywhere.
The mailing was legitimately unbelievable. We live in a neighborhood, one of the standalone boxes, so people are out there walking, and there's almost always, I think this is the case, there's a garbage can right by one of those. There wasn't even enough room because it was already full of the mailers being stuffed in.
Yeah, just overflowing
every day, 2 or 3. What was the one? Was it Sheehy?
Sheehy,
yes.
There was little kids running around the playground at my kid's school, and they were like, "You're a Sheehy. No, you're a Sheehy." Now, what's really funny, and Tim brought this point up the other day, was if they had spent $1 million a week talking about what a great guy John Tester was versus what a piece of shit Tim Sheehy supposedly is, they probably would have won.
But can you think since you and I have been alive, can you think of a single example of a positive campaign?
No.
I can't either.
No,
it's always the attack of the other person's character.
Correct. And it goes both ways, right? And what I will say is, and I think that this is also part of why it happens the way that it does. It is to deter good people from going down that road in the future, and it allows quote unquote them to continue to maintain power in certain ways, because then they dictate the people they're putting forward. And if you're putting those people forward, then you ultimately have some sort of level of control over that situation, that person. Mm-hmm. And it's a scare tactic. It's not just that, like, we'll go after your policies, we'll go after your stances. We will go after your family. We will go after your businesses. We will go after your kids. There is no area of that is off limits. And, if you're somebody that is at a point in your life, like your businesses and your finances, et cetera, are like totally sound, okay, maybe they can't affect it that bad.
No, they just make shit up then.
But they do. But if you're in a point where you're building businesses, you're growing businesses, you're growing a family, you're growing a life, right? And you have that level of attack coming at you. It's really, I mean, I think honestly, it's a warning and it's a scare tactic to other good potential candidates to you come into the space. This is what's going to happen to you as well. And when
win or lose.
And then when you think about it, I mean, as I was actually surprised how some of those, the campaigns, the commercials, the flyers, I had people say to me at different places in Montana, well, I saw that on TV, so it has to be true. And I'm like, you realize that those are paid advertisements. And they were like, well, it's on TV. And these are adults.
I saw Airwolf on TV.
Exactly.
That doesn't mean it's true.
It doesn't mean it's true.
You don't get that reference at all, do you?
Not at all.
We
have
are
to
dying,
Google that.
We're a dying breed.
Yeah.
I was actually on YouTube the other day trying to find the seasons of Airwolf because it's time. It's time to watch it again.
Go through the whole thing.
The last time I watched it, I think I was 10. It's time.
Yeah, you might. Did you find it?
You can find little snippets. I can't find anywhere where you can actually watch the episodes.
Interesting. Because there's a lot of that now too, where like you're like, I should be able to find this.
Yeah.
And you can't.
Well, instead I went down the rabbit hole of what happened to that helicopter, which it ended up being sold to a charter company in Germany. It actually crashed.
Got
the original Airwolf helicopter crashed.
Yeah. Got it. Interesting.
Yeah, I was bummed. Not that I was going to buy it, but maybe I was going to go visit.
That's funny.
That was one of my favorite shows as a kid.
That is a good show. But the funny, and we can talk about it more, but like the interesting thing was in the last, point, just kind of thinking back on this, but there was two things that really stood out. There was a guy I know, and all these guys, they like to refer to themselves as political operatives, I think is the word. And really they're just, the word operator or operative doesn't come to mind when you
Are
actually
they just influence peddlers, essentially?
Pretty much.
Connectors or people that
Correct.
Yeah.
And so one of these guys who I knew called me before Tim got started. And so I'm I pick up the phone and he's like, hey, just so you know, like this is all business, not personal. You just, we got nothing against Tim as a person, but this is just how it is. And I was like, yeah, that's fine, man.
Hold on, Michael, what are you doing?
I don't know why it did that.
Are you over there doing other work instead of paying attention to his talk? If you want to do some work, pull up a fucking clip of Airwolf, all right?
There you go.
And make
Put
your
it on
life
that
better.
screen.
I actually already did.
Fucking
Yeah.
pull it up, dude. Let's watch this shit.
Yeah.
Another clip I
Dun,
found.
dun, 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 dun.
I like that you already found it. Oh, look, there it is.
Fucking Ernest Borgnine.
Oh, that is amazing. Oh, that is
Who
good.
doesn't want to wear a motorcycle helmet while flying a helicopter?
You don't wear that with your...
I do wear a helmet, but not a motorcycle helmet
yeah.
because they make ones for it. Old Jan Michael Vincent, I heard the cocaine kind of derailed his career.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I heard he had constant meetings with the Colombian marching powder, and it just marched his ass right out of that role.
That will happen in that time frame of...
Scroll down, actually, Michael. I'm curious here. Yeah, 84. So I was
there you
a
go.
whopping 7.
Nice.
79 episodes.
See, I didn't catch that until I was a little... So I would have been 3.
Michael,
but
click
I
on
did
that.
catch them.
A little arrow. Can I stream Airwolf?
I gotta find that.
To the right. To the right. Please say yes. Please say yes. Oh, Roku channel? Son of a bitch.
You don't have that one?
Is that? Can you get that on Apple TV?
No, I think you have to have the actual Roku.
Oh, fuck off into the sunset.
That's how all these services are now. You think you have them all, and then the one thing you want to watch is on some random one that...
Dude, I'm not going to be my dad yet. I just went through a horrible, horrible adventure with him. He spent 6 hours on customer support with Hulu because he was embarrassed to ask me to help him log in because he shares my fucking account.
Nice.
So I go to his house. The TV's damn near ripped off the wall. He's got an 8.5 by 11 legal pad with a perfect mind shit written down. And I tried to ask him to brief me on what he had learned. He could not. He was confusing things that had no association. He had pulled the Apple TV puck out. He was getting the serial number off of it. His wife was like, give us your email and password. I'm like, fuck you. I just logged in and I left.
How long did it take you to fix it?
4.2 minutes.
Nice. So his 6 hours of
Yeah. He just didn't want to get made fun of.
sure. You weren't going to make fun of
No.
him, though, of course.
So 18 months before what does that mean? Does that mean they start thinking about the strategy, or does he just start going out and meeting people and talking to people?
Yep. What they did was, they start, once they committed to do it, they start doing all these different tests on, they call these people, oh, do you know this guy? No. Well, what if we told you he was this, this, and this?
Mm-hmm.
And then they go, oh, okay. And then they come up with these assessments. I can't remember. His name recognition was extremely low. So the biggest thing he had to do was actually start getting out there and meet people. And ultimately, that's where he was successful within the campaign. But you've got these guys. So this guy, like, I'm talking to him on the phone and he goes, nothing personal, blah, blah. I'm like, all right, cool. Yeah, just like keep it above the belt. Like, I get it. It's a dirty business, whatever. And I was like, but I really would appreciate if you left our business and my name out of it because I have nothing to do with it.
Absolutely not, sir.
Oh, no. He goes like this. Oh, of course. Of course. We would never. Andy, as I go, all right, I go, well, whatever. Like, and I go to hang up. He goes, however, there is an article coming out on Bloomberg tomorrow that you might see your name in. Click. And I'm like, what? And then the next day, obviously, I read the article and I'm like, oh, so this is just like, if he had called me up and said, look, man, like, blades are coming right to the face. Like, I'd be like, okay, cool. Don't stab me in the back, though, and then call me up and be like, oh, I would never. Like, at least have the balls to call me and be like, yo, this is coming. You're getting pulled into it. And I'm just like, you just learn so quickly. And I think it shows, honestly, why there has been such a drift in poor candidates. And we've ended up with what we have.
Who the fuck would want to do it?
Yeah, it's and that's what, and honestly, this was when Tim and I first talked about it. This is what I told him. I'm like, as your buddy, I don't think you should do it. And as an American, I hope you do. And I still feel that way.
Spot, yeah.
Because his kids, are the exact same age as my kids. And we spent a ton of time and just watching, because you can't isolate that away. And, as your kids get older, and I think a lot of, folks that go that direction into politics, they're usually a lot further kind of down the road. Like most of the people I know that have done it, their kids are either like out of college, they're at a little bit different point in life. When your kids are in grade school and they're being subject to like those, and it's almost like inadvertent to a certain extent. You couldn't turn anything on without seeing that. And they handled it really well. But it was so to get his name recognition there, I mean, he had to travel all over Montana and shake hands and meet people and talk about what he was going to do and why he wanted to do it. And, ultimately that's what, that's what got him over the line.
What was the narrative I remember hearing was he essentially bought into your business so he could say he was a Montanan, right? That's the angle they took.
Yeah, they took a couple angles there.
But that one directly wrapped in Little Belt, which is because I do remember the conversation. You're like, how do I attack these motherfuckers?
Yeah, because every part of you wants to be like, how do you come back? And then you have to
can't.
And how do you combat $1 million a week? And then here's what happens is
With $2 million.
Yeah, well, if you don't have any money,
I also
it's
don't
hard
have
to do
it
that,
either.
right?
I'm just giving you advice. Should you have $2 million?
So what and then what you start to learn as you show a little like tactical patience is that they only keep pressing into the areas where they're starting to get traction.
The pain points.
Exactly. And so the less life you breathe back into it, the quicker, it goes away. So the angle they took was exactly what you said. And then they hadn't really attacked the business directly. And then they came out with an ad. And again, you're not like talking about them finding real like varsity level people in any of these industries, right?
Yeah.
So they found some dipshit guy and he came out. You probably remember, anybody in Montana remembers that. And they basically were like at my ranch, like I have cattle and I grow alfalfa. Tim Sheehy's ranch and company sells pink hoodies and little coffee cups. And we were like, yeah, we do. And
in addition to the other things.
correct. And they didn't hit on any of that. They didn't hit on the fact that like the business and the company that we had built and the ranch that we've built and was like, it wasn't even close comparison to this guy. Like, I can't even think of a good example of this guy that they drug up,
Yeah.
To push their message. Ultimately, that message fell pretty flat because a lot of people in Montana were like, oh, so that means if I bought a business or start new in a business, the ranching and agriculture industry is like one of the only industries I've seen where there's this huge amount of emphasis put on how many generations before before you did it. And if you don't have that, there's kind of a feeling of like then your skill or your legitimacy in the industry isn't as good as somebody else's.
They just think you watched Yellowstone and thought you're gonna be the
correct
next Jim Dutton or whatever.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
But like think about it. Like if you're a first generation doctor, most people go like, oh, great job. You're like the first person in your family who goes.
Nobody really asks what the doctor. Have you ever gone to a doctor and be like, sir, how many generations?
How many generations?
How many generations of your kind have been a brain surgeon? You're like, oh, sweet, you're a doctor, so please fix my elbow.
Well, think about like the SEAL teams. Like how many times were you like, well, this guy, you're like 99% of the people that go into that don't come from generations of people who did it before, right?
No, because there's very few idiots in each family that would think that is a viable occupation.
Correct. Yeah. And so they,
I got an idea for a cool job. Let's suffer for as long as possible.
Yeah.
Most likely in peacetime, have a really shitty neck, shoulder, back, knees, and elbows for the rest of your life, and maybe get to do something, maybe not. And even if you get to do something, it's not going to be as awesome as people think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, and we'll pay you like okay for the effort.
Well, you can maybe flirt with 6 digits if
you're
tax free.
Yeah. I remember I told somebody one time, I was like, yeah, but I had this bonus coming up and I could get it tax free.
Yeah.
And I told them how much it was. And they're like, so you were willing to get shot for that low? And I was like,
you're like, no,
I would have done it for free.
No, the bonus is just an add-on. I was already doing that job.
Yeah, I was doing that no matter what.
Don't go into the military for financial independence.
Yeah.
Not that it can't be achieved. I tell you what, there's some people now in the modern era, fuck man, their side hustles, they're hustling on the side and they're killing it. And as long as it doesn't impact your military duties, I'm all about that.
And people that were smart with how they, invested in what they did with their money. There's people that came out and did. I mean, we absolutely, were able to come out in a far better financial position than we were and when we came in. But
it's a stable job. You do make good money.
You do. You absolutely do.
And I think you would agree with this. People focus far too much on the money coming in. The number you really need to control is the money going out.
Yes. Yes, correct. Yeah, it's plenty coming in that you can actually, the fact that you got to go do like those things with your buddies and they paid you as well as they did.
Even if it was peacetime, right? If I had served from 80 to 2000, I still would have be scratching my head right now wondering how I was able to find a job where they paid me to go do those things, as opposed to me paying for those experiences.
100%. Look how many people now, there's people out there that pay to go just get like a look at that. I'm like, man.
What are your thoughts on the SEAL boot camps? I see the wheels spinning. Don't you dare fucking soften it. Tell me what you think.
I mean, I don't know why anybody, I don't know why anybody would go to one of those.
Yes, you do.
I mean, I know why they would. Can't.
You can't because you went through the real thing.
Yes.
It has taken me a while to come to the realization. So our job was very physical, like visceral physical experiences. Mm-hmm. I started seeing this when I was working for CrossFit because there are some people, and again, CrossFit, there's the definition for the company. It's exercise. That when I was exposed to it was at a maximum 60 minutes per day to get you better at the 23 hours that occurred outside of the gym. People went into the sport aspect of that. The ones that got the most, I would say, addicted to it, whether psychologically or physiologically, when you talk to them, they didn't have a lot of physical experiences, like a visceral physical experience. And so that was their first one, and it latched. They loved it. I see it in jiu-jitsu too. And I don't think it's negative. I just think that it speaks to either people are not necessarily seeking that out, or we have crafted a world, whether people believe it or not, that is so soft that a lot of the hardship is kind of been rounded out.
Yeah.
And so people, I think inherently, they want to touch the dragon a little bit.
Sure.
You know, I saw one of these ads, and I don't know anything about this, but they were knighting people at the end of one of these boot camps. It's not nice, Greg, at all.
Well, it's if you actually said to me though, if you said, all right, I don't know what they cost, right? But if you're like, all right,
thousands of dollars.
okay, so let's just say it's $5,000.
$18,000.
No,
You go fuck yourself.
I am not.
Okay.
Well, actually, no, don't pull it up because I don't know where this conversation is going to go. I'm not trying to talk shit on another veteran's business. I am just talking in general about my thoughts.
I'm afraid if I see anybody that comes up on it too, and I
Don't pull it up.
I don't want to look because then it might skew my.
I am going to say this. That is shockingly more money than I thought.
Okay, so it's shocking, right? So so you take that $18,000. If you
Which
said,
I don't remember getting that at the end of Buds. Do you?
actually, I was later than you, and I got a bonus at the end of Buds.
What?
Yes. Oh yeah.
How much was
it was taxed, but pre-tax, 40 grand. Biggest check I had ever cashed in my life at that point.
You got a $40,000 bonus for
Yes.
making it through Buds.
Yes. Yes.
You're a piece of
And
shit.
so did everybody else from I think they started that in maybe 04.
I'm going to go ahead and need your trident.
Look up, Michael, if you don't mind, look up the SEAL Challenge contract and what year it started. I'm just curious.
I am going to need you to mail me your trident.
Did you not know that
For
was
Bozeman.
happening?
No.
Oh, yeah. They had, because if you came off the streets
You're
and
not a
signed
real
up.
SEAL.
Well,
You're not a real SEAL.
if I hadn't done.
First off, it's clearly jealousy because, I got my paycheck every 2 weeks, which at that point might have been $600 in a stiff high five and handshake on the way out the door.
Oh, yeah.
40 grand?
Well, think about this too. This is actually, I think, the funniest part about it is nobody that made it through Buds made it through because of the 40 grand.
You don't know that.
I'm pretty sure.
I would say it's most likely why you made it through.
Well, you could argue
In
that.
Hell Week, you were like, I am going to quit.
I'm going to
guys.
get that 40 grand.
But somebody whispered to you, what about the 40 grand?
Yeah. You're like, don't quit. You
You're
might
like,
get
fine,
that
I will
40.
suffer for 72 more hours for that 40
For
grand.
that, yes.
What'd you discover,
Now, you
Michael?
didn't get it till the end of.
Oh, this document is dated at 06.
Okay.
But I can't find anything that specifically says when it started.
Gotcha. Well, anyway, when they were trying to get more people through,
You got it on graduation?
you got it. I don't know. I can't remember if you got it. I think you got it at the end of SQT.
Really?
Yeah.
Were they giving birds out or not giving birds out? Did you get your trident at the end of SQT?
You did.
Okay.
And then when I showed it to my team, they quickly took it away from us. And then.
For how long?
That is a good question. It was different for everybody based on how you did as a
Could
new
have been
guy.
in a few months.
It was a couple months. However, we did have people at that command that were, I was laughing about this the other day. There was one person in particular that let every new guy know that you weren't a SEAL until you'd been there for 6 years. And he didn't want to see anybody wearing a trident.
For 6 years?
6 years, having a trident. And he was dead serious. And he said, I'm running through his voice, if I see you in town telling people that you're a SEAL or wearing a trident around, I will murder you. And I'm not joking, Andy.
First off, your average enlisted tour is 48 months.
Yes.
So what he's saying is you're going to have to do your entire first tour at a command without wearing your bird. And 12 months into your second tour?
Yeah. He had some of the greatest quotes of possibly all time. And
That is a benchmark, though, that is
he told everybody,
that's really unachievable.
he set us down on these bleachers because there were some new guys kind of helping some other new guys. And he proceeded to tell us just exactly what he thought of our level, how long it would take before he considered us worthy of even wearing and then he proceeded with one of the greatest quotes of all time. And he said, and I've actually reused this in other like contexts, but this was it in the context he told it. He said, at the end of, after yelling at everybody, he said, you know what new guys instructing new guys is? That's like brothers fucking sisters. It feels real good when you're doing it, but all it does is make more retards.
God, that's not in doctrine anywhere, but that's good.
That is as good when you see somebody and the way, I mean, it made you as a new guy. If one of your buddies was like, hey, how do I do this? You're like, I don't know. I'm not telling you.
How many people, how big of a recruiting crisis do you think NSW would have if people really knew what it was like? That your first speech is going to be that, and that we're basically idiots with machine guns running around doing the absolute best that we can, but oftentimes not as good as we could.
Yeah. It was funny because
I mean, the Hollywood movies and the books are great.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily my experience. I look back. First off, I've been out for a good amount of time now, and
have you been out? Well, you probably.
I got out in 13.
Okay, and you were in for how?
17.
Okay, so
I'm 5 years away from being out as long as I was in. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I look back with pure wonderment on how I'm alive. On some of the absolutely dumbest shit I have ever done in my life under the guise of being a special operations.
Yeah. Well, and under the real guys of just like really not wanting to look like a pussy in front of your friends.
Yeah.
Like that is the driving factor of, and we talked about this last time, but like when I got out of Buzz in SQT, I went right to SDV. And SDV is like.
With your 40 grand, you left that
I
out
did.
last time.
I did.
Bastard.
And what I learned after spending as much time in SDVs as I did was that you didn't have to actually implement a lot of hazing. If somebody needed a little, course correction, you just keep putting them on dives.
Well, the SDV, I don't know if you know this, is actually hazing.
It is hazing. And that was the way that, so other than a couple things here and there, but they only actually, other than one person's hit, that was his personal, bar. But, they took him for a bit. And then as you were a new guy, if you were good and you were doing all the stuff you were supposed to, you got it back. Just do not let that particular individual see you walking around town for 6 years. And there was guys like that had been there, because the platoons, they were long. They were about around 2 years per platoon. So you already felt.
That's what it is at a regular team too.
Is it?
18-month workup, 6-month deployment. Yeah.
Okay. So, and maybe it felt long because we would do these, you would have your workup and then you would go into this, not exactly the same, but almost like a deployable status. That was a year. So maybe it was closer to 3 years. Because I remember all my buddies were back from their first deployments and we hadn't even like started on ours yet. And, they're quickly reminding everybody that like they're a one platooner now. You're a new guy. And
potentially the most dangerous combination is a one platooner and a new guy.
Correct.
Because those are actually the same thing.
Other than a new guy helping a new guy.
God, I'm shocked. I think if they were to make if it would be possible to capture the shenanigans of that job. Again, I look back now and I am amazed and shocked that I'm still alive. Cannot believe that I got paid to do the things that I was able to do. And I'm really glad it's in the rearview mirror.
Sure. I'm guessing, with all your jumping stuff, were you jumping those bundles?
Yeah.
See, that to me, and I never did that, but I watched people do it. That to me was one of those things where you're just like.
I'm sure that the technology's improved. I know they've changed the tethering system from beneath the Tandem Master down to the bundle. Those opening shocks were some of the most horrendous, like G-force inducing openings. The tether, if you didn't have your legs in the right position, I would go back and I would augment some of the courses. If you, as it pulled you from your body from horizontal to vertical, if you didn't keep your legs away from that tether, I don't want to overstate it. I know for a fact I watched at least one video, probably two, of a tether whip, because as you go through that trap door and you accelerate, oftentimes with the bundle underneath you, you'll put a little bit of slack into the tether and it whips out and just complete blown all the CLs in a knee if it hits the leg sideways.
Jeez.
Yeah, so you got to keep your feet away from it.
Huh. So you just keeping your feet like super, just mindful of like.
I would cross mine and kick mine behind me as hard as I could so they wouldn't flail around. Some of those openings were dynamic.
I don't doubt it.
Yeah. I mean, you're like hugging and just, I would cross my legs, push them behind me as far as I could, just wanted to stay away from that tether because you'd see it. As you deploy your parachute, you go through that trap door and it accelerates and there's a little bit of slack on it. And then as it starts, you feel the tension starting to build. Holy shit, dude.
Huh.
We're talking stars after
When
opening.
you like, have you had a lot of like neck back issues after that?
Yeah, we all have.
I know, but I mean,
It's called the Team Guy Trifecta.
yeah, but that
back, neck, shoulders.
But that in particular,
They brought out G testing. I was not there for this, so I'm repeating a story that I heard. They brought out G testing sensors because they wanted to get an understanding of the opening shock load. After sequentially breaking the sensors on multiple jumps in a row, they just left without any more interest in knowing how many G forces the Tandem Master was taking on opening. They measure ejection seat ride G forces with those things. They were breaking.
yeah, I don't doubt it.
We would do 4 of those in a day.
Oh yeah, yeah, and then I mean,
Just pushing a fridge out.
yeah, you know,
Yeah.
the first time I actually saw one of those, I was like, "You're tying that to somebody?" And they're like, "Oh yeah,
It's pretty cool.
it is cool." I mean,
Yeah.
I'm blown away by like honestly, like the skill of being able to actually do that.
It's less skill than you think.
Yeah, but it's still like you got to be confident in your ability under canopy in the air.
You can chop it away.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. Oh, you can
like-
cut that thing away, and it should. It even has its parachute with its own cypress.
Oh, interesting.
So what you're wearing on the Tandem Master in your chest is actually the bundle parachute. So you should be able to cut it away. It's a 4-point connection.
Okay.
It has its cypress. It should open. They don't always open. Because sometimes it will get a little bit out of control. And you have to, one of the jumps you do, you have to self-set your drogue. And the reason I'm saying you have to be confident, yes, and you have to be competent. But on a normal operation, somebody is standing there setting your drogue for you. So you basically are shuttling the thing out. You want to hold on to it until you get into the air, let go of it at the right time. You'll pitch over the top, like you'll come over the top, and then you'll feel the drogue and you start to fall. One of the jumps you have to do is a self-set. So you go out without somebody holding onto your drogue. So it can rocket you over to the other side, and people will get underneath the bundle and throw their drogue.
Have you explained what these are to your listeners before?
It's just this can. It's about
Yeah,
this
it's
size.
a can.
It's about relatively the size. It's a refrigerator. I mean, it's about average size of a house refrigerator, hundreds of pounds. It's a way to, you could reduce the burden on other jumpers by putting a bunch of equipment in there. You could jump in mortars or rockets.
Yeah, so all the gear would go in there, and one guy would
If you
jump
wanted
out
to.
and fly it.
Yeah,
or
it makes
not
it
all
easier
of it,
for
but
everybody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a good amount of team gear,
For
right,
sure.
would get flown in by one person, and
It's an
yeah.
additional skill set. You learn to jump passengers and the bundles, and it was fun. But I do remember specifically the ramp came down on the pass. I was the first guy out on the first bundle pass, and you have a video guy, and he's holding the front of the bundle as he's walking you back towards the aircraft, and he's checking the spot, and he'll tell you to stop, and you just have these 2 fabric handles. And I remember sitting there thinking in my head, this is arguably one of the dumbest things I've ever fucking done.
Yeah.
And then the green light came on, and you just look over. You just look over at the drogue set, like ready, set, go, and you just fucking send the thing.
yeah, and you know that everybody's behind you, watching you.
Oh, the camera
Judging
guy is.
you.
And of course.
Oh, and if you're on camera,
oh, dude,
yeah.
every jump at that course, there's a video debrief
oh,
because you learn on passengers first, and then you go do the bundles.
dude, that reminds me. We were doing this thing, and it's one of those things that kind of sounds cool until you start doing it. But they had this guy come out to Hawaii, and he was going to teach this free dive breath hold course.
That's how you.
And
That's how you fucking die.
Well, this guy taught, all the people. So he comes in, he's got this whole class, blah, blah, blah. And, anybody that was into spearfishing, that kind of stuff was like, oh, this is amazing. Everybody else was like, are you kidding me? This is what we're doing it was either a week or 2 weeks. But they would drop this plate down on this rope, and then you would go down the rope, and they would put it at different feet. And so I remember I'm doing this one, and we went down I can't remember if we went over 100 feet.
Which is very, very deep.
Very deep on a breath hold.
Yes.
And you're supposed to like, basically you drop down. Once you get below, I think it's like 33 feet, you actually start
you're
descending.
negatively buoyant,
exactly.
right? Yeah.
And so you're just like, you're kind of holding this rope and you're just trying to chill out. And, but as you're going down, I mean, you can feel your lungs like just getting smaller and smaller. And I remember I'm just sitting there, I'm chilling out and much best as you can. And I'm like, I should be there by now. Like, I'm going to take a little peek, you know? And they told you like, don't look, just wait till your hand hit it. And then I'm like, I'm going to take a little peek.
It's been enough time.
I take a peek and like, the only thing I see is the camera on this plate, probably 15, 20 feet still below me. And I'm at this point, like, I'm ready to go. But I'm like, oh, that camera's looking right at me. Like, I mean, I looked at it, like, it wasn't like, who is that? Like, it was 100%. So I kick down to this thing. By the time I get there, I've used every little bit of oxygen I have left. And I look up and I remember thinking to myself, the props on the dive safety boat looked very small. And I was like, oh. And I started kicking towards the top. And you're not supposed to, you don't want to burn a lot of oxygen. So you're supposed to, just nice and steady. Well, I was not nice and steady. So not only did the camera catch me, look at it, swim down to it, then it caught this like panicked swim to the surface. And the only reason that I swam down the rest of that way was because that camera was looking right at me. And I knew that everybody was going to debrief at the end.
Yeah.
And now, once again, I was like, you know what? I'm getting down there.
The debriefs were amazing. So you have to hold the bundle until you get into the air. You don't have to. The ride is wilder if you don't. And people, so what I would do is I would tell myself, hold on to this bundle until it's vertical. Because you're coming out of the airplane horizontal.
Yep.
It hits, it pitches, just let go. And in the videos, you'd have the student, talk to me about your jump. Oh, I had an excellent exit. I held onto the bundle until it was vertical and then let go, and it was a great skydive. And then we'd hit play. And they're 6 feet back in a C-130
just launching that thing. See, I was actually, I didn't realize that you actually went out and held it until you got, I thought that thing like went out.
Greg,
and then you were just.
Initial people strapped themselves to the top of it.
That.
Like Connex boxes and stuff like that. And for people who don't know what a Connex box, it's a, what do you think? 2 feet tall, 3.5 feet. It's a rectangle.
Yeah.
Edges that are designed to just absolutely slice and dice you into fucking pieces. Break every bone. That is metal rectangle that we'd store gear in, or you would used to before.
It's like one of those. I don't know what they're, but they're like those steel containers you can buy. But it's
a box of death.
It's probably a quarter, right? If you just quartered that thing up into a little
strapping that shit
to
to their chest. Go. Initial tandem masters.
Yeah.
Strapping themselves to the bundles. Ride it out. Go.
Yeah, see that.
Yeah,
that's where you look back and you're like, that is some dumb
or awesome,
depending on your level of. But like, that's the funniest part is, whether it's somebody taping you or just your buddies there. I mean, I'd say, what percent do you think it is of people that actually will do whatever the task is just because everybody's there watching?
84.
Yeah, I was going to say it's at least 80.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because, I mean... And
nobody wants to do the stuff they asked us to, but we were all there, and we knew that if we didn't, we would never live it down.
You would never live it down. And that was the main reason why you were like, oh, yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, totally. Oh, you don't want to go, pussy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe, you know what, we should add a kilometer to this patrol in, just because you don't want to go. Meanwhile, nobody wants to fucking
Nobody wants to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Michael, are you ready to enlist?
Yeah, definitely.
Michael asked me the other day if he thought, or if I thought he could make it through buds. I don't know.
No, I didn't. You asked me if I thought I could make it through buds.
Oh, yeah. What'd you say?
I said the water would probably get me.
Oh, yeah. He's never seen the ocean. So assuming that's not part of the
That's
equation,
not
what do you
true.
think? Let's take a snapshot of Michael. What do you think? He's taller than you, but almost every human is.
That is true.
Do you know of a shorter SEAL than you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. I couldn't think of them by name, but like there was guys in my boat crew that were shorter than me. But I was in the Smurf crew the whole time.
Of course. Which there's no chance they let them call them that anymore.
Oh, you don't think so? You think they changed that?
Yeah. I bet you they did.
Oh, because that's like a point of pride. Because that and the what do they call the tall one? There was a name for that too. I can't remember what it was though. Maybe there wasn't. Because they had their own
I
boat.
was never in either. I was never threatening to be in either.
Well, yeah,
I
because
was purely in the middle.
what people don't realize, that it's all height based as you go through buds, and then you line up. So if you're, 5'10" to 6 foot and you weigh, let's say average like 190, there's a lot of you.
Yeah.
If you're on the short end or the tall end, as people in your boat crew quit, they recycle you with somebody else. So if you're in a boat crew with all the same height people, it's you don't really notice the difference. If you're the tallest guy in the Smurf crew or the tall guys,
hell,
it's very uncomfortable. And, but yeah, there was definitely people that I've either met. I mean, there was a couple of people that were definitely shorter than me for sure.
you were almost purpose built for the SDV, I think.
What's funny is you would think they just sent like a bunch of like small guys there, but there was.
It'd be better if they did.
You would think that there was more room, but it didn't matter if there was 4 small guys in the back or 3, huge guys and 1 small guy or a mix. There was never more room. It always got. I mean, I've ridden back there with every size human, and it just there's no room back there. Depends what you're doing. Like if you're in warmer places, it's not terrible. When you're in cold places, it is. I mean,
no, I do not support in any way the length of dives you guys used to do.
I don't think I've told this story ever like public. I mean, people know the story, but like I saw a SEAL officer refuse to train and not get in the SDV.
Already had his bird,
had done deployments, was a troop commander, and
03?
Yeah, or 04.
Okay, so a lieutenant or lieutenant commander.
Yes.
Refused to train.
Tell
the story, be as broad as you want to.
So
Start with what was his name?
I will not say his name. But this is just gives you a level of like what the SDV is like. So you,
Michael, if you did make it through buds, in the unlikely event, which I'd actually give him a coin toss. 50-50.
It's so hard. I mean,
which is better odds than I'd give most people.
Cool.
But an SDV would break you.
Isn't that the little tiny thing you go into?
Greg would be able to answer this. I've only seen one in person one time, and then I ran away from it because I was terrified they were going to put me in it.
Yeah, and you should have been. But yeah, so we would do these dives, and by the time you get into your dry suit and your buddies are there and people are helping you get ready, and then the deal is like as soon as the SUV goes in the water, there's no screwing around. Like you are getting in. Like everybody's waiting on you basically, right?
Well, you mean as soon as the boat touches the water?
Yeah. The like standard is like boat touches the water, everybody's standing by, like dive suit checks are done, and you're getting in that thing and you're going. Like everybody wants to try to get this thing over with.
It's going to be long enough as it is.
Completely. And so this particular time, it was like a late afternoon, so it was not dark yet. And the boat got launched, and then if you wait too long, it starts drifting out, and then you have to swim out to it. So you're swimming out to it. You've got this dry suit on. You got all your gear under it. You're sweating basically. And by the time you get to the SDV, then you're completely out of breath. And the expectation is like you're immediately going to put a hook in your mouth and go into the SDV and then do some, mental gymnastics to...
Michael, pull up a picture of an SDV so we have some background flavor for this story.
This particular person...
Oh, fuck yeah. Go to images.
There it is. Yeah.
Just go to images. There'll be some bangers.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So, if you look at the images, so there would be people in the boat, kind of getting it set up, and then the rest of the people the mission specialists would be making their way out there. So this particular day, we're getting ready, and this guy comes up to me and he's like, "Yeah, like I want to go," and I'm like, "You want to go on this?" He's like, yeah. Like I'm like, all right.
And this was an SDV qualified guy?
He's been through SDV school.
Okay.
And
was he jocked up yet?
No.
Okay.
We were no. We're still at the like the high bay.
Okay. This
is kind of midday, and people knew the closer it got to launch time, the grumpier everybody got. And
we should explain why. give me a broad range of dive time that you might.
Oh, you could like I would say like a no worries, not even think about it. It would be somewhere around like 4 to 6 hours. 6 hours and above, you'd be like, oh. But a 4-hour dive could quickly become a 6-7 hour dive. And these were just, this wasn't once in a while. This was pretty regular. And so,
for people who have no understanding of that, we'll call it 6 hours. Go sit in a warm pool underwater on an open circuit rig for 6 hours and let me know how much you enjoyed that.
yeah, and then make the pool super cold and cram yourself into like a bathtub with a couple of your friends, turn off all the lights and sit there and don't talk, don't move. And
For 6
yeah, like if you
fucking
think about that,
hours.
like that's like driving, from
that's more time than it will take you to get home in Bozeman.
absolutely. In underwater, I was trying to, because my wife has the kids, like they went on spring break today, and my one daughter yesterday was like, we're going to be in the car for 7, and I was like, 7 hours? Imagine that car flooded with icy cold water, and you and your sisters crammed in the back in the dark. I'm like, don't tell me about 7 hours, And but everybody at STV is STV qualified, so they go through the course. They've all dove, but there's different levels of. In this particular training area, and I remember the first time I did it, I mean, every alarm bell in your brain is like, this is bad, get out of here. This is bad. And they're like, they shut the door, and however you're in. And again, you're not gonna be the one that's like, I'm bailing out of this thing, right? And
Does that ever happen?
well, I've never seen, other than this one incident, I've never seen somebody else like bail out of it. Everybody gets to the point there where you just like fight that demon down. But when you come out, so everybody had dove in this thing. This was not like the first time ever. First time in this particular scenario, different gear, much more claustrophobic. When you're in dry suits, they're very floaty. So you have tons of weight. Like, I mean, I used to have, I can't remember exactly how much, but like, I mean, I would need, 40, 50 pounds.
Yeah, because you just cannot get all the air
To
out
keep
of it, right?
keep your butt like just on the seat, so you're not floating in the back like a washing machine the whole time. And so, as we would get closer to these dives, nobody's coking and joking. People are, whoever's diving. And I was known to get, like, I would get a little grumpy. So this guy comes up to me like maybe 30 minutes before we're about to leave. We've done all the briefs, we've done all the things. And he also made a comment, and he's like, well, who are you putting me in the boat with? And I'm like, oh, I'm just going to put you with these guys. He's like, I don't want to watch a bunch of new guys. Like, I want to go with like you and some other people. I'm like, all right, whatever. So I shift the thing around, and so about an hour, maybe a half hour before we leave, he comes up to me. He's like, what are you wearing under your dry suit? I'm like, what? He's like, what are you wearing under your dry suit? I'm like, warmies. He's like, well, what do you think I should wear? I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know.
Clearly the answer is a Speedo and nothing else.
Yeah. And then I'm like, I don't know, like just whatever you think is appropriate for you.
That's a weird question for a guy who's already dove and probably should have had a wetsuit on and understands the immersion and cold.
Yeah. So like he hadn't done this dry suit stuff yet. So he'd only done
Like
regular
wetsuit stuff?
Wetsuits.
Oh God, that's even worse.
Well, the wetsuits, like you just throw it on, right? And
I mean, at least you
and
can just immediately urine
there's no thought process, right? Like you just put a wetsuit on
and suffer.
Yeah, and then like whatever, it's up to you. Like you're like, am I going naked or am I wearing like, like Ranger panty? Like what am I wearing? There's no thought. With this, it's more of like if you were going to go into a cold weather environment, you're like, I want my puff, I want a mid layer, I want a base layer. Like you need like the John Barklow 9 layers of
which is wild because you're going to sweat your ass off when you start, but you need that shit for the trenches of that dive.
Once you start getting cold, there's no
coming back.
Whatever you have is what you have. So but when the further you have to swim, you're sweating and you're breathing. So, and I'll tell you, there's another really funny part of this whole story. But so he's asking me all these questions, and I'm just like, finally, like, hey man, I don't know. You just got to figure out like whatever it is that you need, but like. And he was like, oh, okay. So then we get there, we get jocked up, we do our dive soups. They launch the boat. This guy's not ready. The boat starts drifting out. Everybody has to swim further.
But he is getting jocked up.
He got jocked up, fully jocked up.
And a dive soup is a diving supervisor check. 2 people check your stuff to make sure that basically it's put on properly and functioning properly.
Correct. So we do all that, and we start making our swim out. Really good buddy of mine was our platoon chief, and he's in there with the other like pilot or whatever, and they're waiting for us. And we get out there, and he's already, kind of giving me the like, and he's got a full face mask on, so he can't yell at me, but I can see his eyes, and I know him well enough of like what he's saying, but like
More importantly, what he's feeling.
Yes. And so me and the other guys that were in my platoon are out there, and this guy who is in charge of our platoon gets out there, and and so he gets out there, and he's like,
so he's in the water out at the boat.
Now we're floating out to.
I mean, he's committed.
We're committed.
Yeah.
We're probably at this point 150 yards from the launch point.
Okay.
And we're drifting.
The evolution has begun.
It has begun. And so everybody's kind of waiting, and you're briefed just like on, like in a bird or whatever, like where you're seated, right? Yeah. And there's more advantageous positions potentially, depending on, you're basically sitting on each other's laps. And so like if you and I were sitting in the back of this thing, if I was sitting on your lap, I'd be closer to the door, which doesn't really matter, but it does feel a little better.
Yeah.
Or you'd be sitting on my lap and you'd be next to the door, right? And then there'd be people next to you as well. And so I'm like, all right, like because I was like, you're going to be in, and then I'm basically in front of you. And you earn your position the longer you're there, right? So you get to be like, hey, I'm going to be the number 1 man in, and I'm sitting here and I'm getting cozy. Then the next guy and the next guy and the next guy. And everybody has a little spot that they like to be. And then the last guy in is the least advantageous position, because basically somebody pushes you in, shuts the door, and however you are is how you are. So if your fin is stuck back like this, you can't move it. If your neck is cranked like that, that's how you are. And if you wiggle around back there, you piss everybody else off, and you will get corrected at the end of this thing.
Perfect.
So you're just, as like a new guy, you're just sitting there. Now you're breathing heavily. You're crammed into this thing. You're underwater, and that's going to be your next few hours, right? And so we get out there, and I'm like, all right, man. I was like, get in. We got to get going. And he's like, I could tell he's a little nervous. He's breathing hard. He's like, are you going to go? There's a couple different rigs that you can breathe on.
Yeah.
And he asked me which one I'm going to go on. And I'm like, this is what I'm doing. He's like, what do you think I should do? I'm like, I don't know, man. It's a personal choice. He's like, well, I'm going to do this. And he starts kind of explaining himself. And I'm like, all right, whatever you, and now my boss is like, really like, let's go. And so he goes, I'm going to do this. I'm like, all right. So he goes in, and he barely ducks in to the back. And as I'm like kind of getting my stuff together to get in to my position, he comes out of that thing. And he is not feeling great. And he's like, oh, keep in mind, he's the only one in there at this point. There's no room back there. I was having I can't breathe. And I'm like, what do you mean you can't breathe? He's like, there's no room, Matt. And and I'm like, look, man.
You're one of 4 fuckers getting
He's
stuck
like,
back
you
there.
got to get back there. We got to get going. He's like, I'm going to switch breathing apparatuses. I'm like, okay. And he's like, so he kind of like is fishing around to find the one he's going to use. And he's like, I can't get it. I'm like, what do you mean you can't get it? He's like, I can't get it. It won't come off. So I reach in. These things are rubber banded. And I'm not joking. I pull this thing with about...
It could have been double wrapped.
It was properly put up. The new guys put it up well. I pulled with about 3 pounds of force, and I popped this thing off. And I'm like, he's like, oh, okay. So I'm like, all right, let's go. Now my boss is, and this is the other part. So Tim, Sheehy, and I were in the same platoon at this point. Tim and this particular individual did not get along super well.
And Tim was an O, right?
Tim was an O.
Okay.
He was our AOIC of this platoon, and he's on the beach, and I can still see, like, we're probably 200 yards out now, and these dry suits are like really tight around your neck. And if you've never seen Tim before, like, he's like a blonde haired, like, and so he had this, I could see his blonde hair and his face, everybody's face is super red because you're basically just being choked. And I see him pacing up and down the beach. And I can just tell, like, what he's saying to our platoon. He's like, look at Greg out there screwing around. He's probably not getting in the boat, and I know he's probably talking shit about me. And so I'm watching this, and I'm looking at this guy, and I'm like, all right, man, like, we have got to get going. And even our new guys are like, what is going on? And I'm like, so the next time and I'd been there at this point for a couple.
Is the boat on the surface kind
Yeah,
of?
we're floating. It's full water, but it's floating.
So he hasn't even entered the
We have
fucking
not even gone under.
he hasn't even entered the true torture chamber yet.
No. We haven't even dove away. So I had been there for a couple of years at this point. So I kind of like, I knew little tricks, you know what I mean? And so, so the second time, now I'm like ready. Like, I am standing by, I am ready. And I'm like, come on, man, like, you got to go. So he gets in, and they don't love when you get like super detailed about how the thing's set up, but let's just say
he's in.
So no, he's in, but let's just say there's a like a bar, like a centerpiece that if you know where it is, you could use for leverage. So I get in right behind him, and I put my foot on this bar, and I'm pushing back against
to make sure he's seated well.
To make sure he's seated in his position. And
not getting out of his position.
At this point, and I told the other guys, I was like, hey, like, as soon as I'm in, number 3, 4, 5, whatever, however many guys
get
you
it
put
done.
back there, right? So they're ready, and they know, like, and so I can feel him behind me. And again, I've been doing this for a while, and so I can feel him back, like, and he's not a small guy. And I start hearing this, and I'm feeling this person behind me, and the door is not very large.
Yeah.
So I'm pushing against him at this point, and so, as a good teammate, helping him out so that we can get going. And like I said, you don't move around back there. Like, you sit in your misery, and you don't,
like everybody else.
You don't make it somebody else's misery. That is, you learn that. So he's back there and he's writhing around, and all of a sudden, like, I'm in my own lap, and this guy is climbing over the top of me through a triangle about this big, and so I'm like I can't get.
You're folded over.
I'm folded over, and he's coming out, and he comes out. And
still not underway.
We have not even launched yet. The other guys hadn't even been in. We maybe had the next guy, but not all of us were in there.
Yeah, we haven't even finished the loading stage.
We haven't loaded yet.
Yeah.
And so I come out, and I'm not real happy. And I'm like,
Perhaps not the best military bearing.
not the best, no merit. So and you've seen it before. Like, when you watch somebody that's like truly panicked.
Yeah. You can see in their eyes.
Oh, so he's like, doing one of these, breathing super hard. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? And he's like, I couldn't breathe down there. And he's like doing one of these numbers. And then finally he just kind of like locks on. And I'm like, look, man. And this guy's like he's not a new guy.
Yeah.
I'm like, look, this is the absolute worst thing you will ever do in your. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me backtrack 1 second. I look back to the shore, and there's Sheehy standing with like this.
Power stance.
And I see that red face and his blonde hair. And he'd done some stuff, to Tim that wasn't super cool. And Tim was my boy. So I'm like, I have two options right now. I can extend the like, hey bro, it's going to be all right. Or I could like push this guy off the cliff, right?
Yeah. Obviously you go with the latter.
Immediately. So I'm like, look, man, this is the worst thing you are ever going to do in your entire career. And I'm like, you either need to get in the boat or swim your ass back to the beach. And he's kind of looking at me, and he's like, yeah, I might need a day iteration. And I'm like, yeah, you do. You need a day. Now, keep in mind, it is not dark out. And I'm like, yeah, you do. You need a day iteration. And he goes, yeah. Now my boss has ripped his mask off. He's like, what is going on? And I'm like, he needs a day iteration. I'm like, he's like, a what? And I'm like, he's got to go back to the beach. And my boss was like, whatever, we just got to get going. So we all get gear back up, we jump in, we take off. This guy has probably a 250-yard swim back.
No swim buddy?
No swim buddy to the beach.
Well, he has his shame.
Now everybody is standing there, not sure what is going on. And as he comes back, there's a particularly obnoxious. He was he was either I think he was an 8, but he was like a trade guy. He's like, "What's going on?" The guy's like, "Oh, he's like, what, you got like an equipment problem?" He's like, No. He's like, "What's the problem then? What are you doing?" And he's like, "I need a day iteration." He's like, "A what?" He's like, a day iteration. He's like, "What?" Then all of a sudden this guy's like, "Senior chief, stand down." And like the guy's like, "What is going on right now?" This guy gets out of the water, takes all his stuff off, jumps in his car, and just leaves. By the time I complete this dive, get on shore,
Just hours
and hours later, and pull my cell phone out, like this shit has gone viral. I bet I had 50 plus texts from Hawaii, from where we were, from every single person. Like, what was? And I mean, people were pissed, like super. I mean,
Yeah.
the CO.
Let's be honest. He quit.
He quit. The CO of the team had texted me. It was like,
Which is traditionally not awesome.
no. And he was like, "You need to call me." And I was like, and then all my buddies who like didn't like this guy were like, just like, "Oh," and guys were like, and so by the time I get out, and then I was like the only one who like really like witnessed it or whatever.
Well, let's be honest too. You had a little extra space back there too.
I did, which was a lot nicer. When we sent him to the beach, it was
kind of a bonus ride.
It was a very pleasant ride, to be honest, and it was as spacious as it gets. But that was like a fair reminder of just how bad that command, how challenging it was, and
What
there
happened
was
to that guy?
Well, let's just say this: he was not our troop commander any longer. It wasn't great. Let's just say that he did have to talk to the group, which wasn't great. And then
Meaning like the group of you guys?
everybody, he got some feedback from everybody. And then he left the command not too long after that, from what I recall. And I'm not sure what he did after that.
Probably a 4-star admiral.
Probably. But that was like one of those times where I'd seen new guys, like everybody else wanted to do exactly what he did.
That speaks though to the reality of the job.
Correct.
Where's that in the movies?
No. When you are putting a dry suit on and a diaper, you don't see that in the SEAL movies.
No. And the selection program, course, crucible, whatever you want to call it, is supposed to weed out anybody that is going to crack and quit.
It was
physically or physiologically.
Yeah, it was. It was. I mean, it was honestly like looking back now, like it was a crazy. I haven't told that story in a long time, and I was not a great person to, because everybody, it just kind of like became funny then,
Yeah.
So everybody's like, "Yo, tell me what happened," and like my boss and stuff, like, in the front, he was like, "Yeah, I just thought Greg was in there like screwing around," and then, and it was just one of those things where, but it was a stark reminder of just how miserable that was. And when you'd been doing it for a while, it lost a little bit of the, just like that, like you just were just like, whatever, this is what I'm doing. You're in there, you're breathing, you're just going through your little, yoga breathing, just trying to calm down and then just go into your
pain cave.
Yeah. But it was,
Did it ever warm your heart watching people suffer more than you?
100%. There was another guy, and this is not nearly as long of a story, not as funny, but there's just certain people in your platoon that like it's more funny when they.
Yes.
So this was that guy, and he was talking all this shit about how it was supposed to be like a 2-hour dive home. He's like, "I'm not wearing any warmies. Like, I'm just throwing this shit on. Like, I can't wait to get home and like play video games or whatever." And he was sitting behind me, and we were all like giving him shit. We're like, yo, like, and he was one of those guys like you couldn't talk any sense into. And we had the worst, one of the, like, he's a good dude, but like, he's just not as talented as an SDV pilot as some of the other guys, a lot slower typically. And he managed somehow to get lost. And that dive took way longer than anticipated. And this guy behind me, it went from him like he kind of writhing around to like these audible episodes that would last like 10 to 15 seconds of him going, "Ooh, ooh, ooh." And I'm laughing so hard. And
Which he can probably feel too.
he can feel me. I am laughing. I'm like worried I'm going to get an AGE because I'm laughing so hard.
Which is an air gas embolism.
Yeah.
Usually caused from holding your breath.
And so I'm laughing and I'm waiting now. It entertained me the whole ride home. And you like reach around and squeeze people to make sure like everybody's okay. And so I was like jokingly, I would squeeze him and he would squeeze me back and then I would just wait. And then he would go into these, by the time we got back, he couldn't physically get out of the boat.
I was going to say, was he just jackhammering
He
the
was
whole way?
he went from jackhammering to like no jackhammering to these,
Which is actually dangerous. It's when they stop jackhammering.
then he would go to these like episodes of just full body convulsions with audible release. And I'm laughing because I know the guy, and it was one of those people that his suffering brought a lot more joy, but he had to get physically carried out of the vessel and put in the van at the end of it.
I mean, I'm sure there's no long-term health consequences from any of the stuff
No.
you guys did.
No, and they've never done any that I'm aware of. You know, nobody's ever done. They have, you know, they
Yeah, that might be intentional, Greg.
probably, you know, they
Sometimes, like when they brought out the G-force meters for the parachutes. they're
Correct.
Like, you know, maybe we don't need to know.
maybe we don't, we just, yeah. But yeah, it was just like one of the, and they never write with diving stuff. They're just like, oh, yeah, we don't know what happens. You're like,
Do you know if it's true? I had heard that the Navy dive tables were essentially created by just throwing people in the water and bending them. They'd bring them up at a certain time, seemed to be good. 5 minutes longer. Oh, you're bent. Perhaps the line on this table is at 2.5 minutes past the last guy.
I've not heard that, but I will say this. One of the other joys of that command is you would get to go to NDNU, I believe it's called, the Naval Experimental Dive Unit.
I've heard of this.
And you would go and test some different theories that they had and or equipment. And so you would,
Like full test dummy type shit? Mm-hmm. Oh,
they had a pool there that they could change, like they basically could make the they could like simulate different depths and temperatures, and then they would put you in there to try different things for certain durations. And so not only did you get to do this for real, you got to go to the training center at times.
fuck.
Yeah. And figure out like, oh, you know, these depths at these temperatures with this gear, you can be there this long before like you can't function anymore.
Have you seen the documentary of these deep sea divers that were working on the oil rigs?
No.
This guy, they just made a movie about it with Woody Harrelson, but I remember watching the documentary. This dude's umbilical gets snapped, and he is left on the bottom as the support vessel drifts away, and they had like I don't know, I want to call it a rover or whatever, but they're like, this guy is fully like seizing out. He, spoiler alert, lives, but they're making a movie about him. I don't even know how deep they are. I think they spend over a week getting pressed when they come back up. That I don't know if there's a paycheck large enough for people who are willing to do that.
It's funny. I just saw a, like a ad or something for that. And I saw the little guy in the boat. I was like, oh, I wonder what that is.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what
They were down there doing, and I didn't even know that they did that with humans. And I don't know why I didn't guess that. But the depths were ungodly.
Yeah.
He gets snagged and somehow, and they have a 5-minute bottle on him, I guess.
I can't get into too much detail. I'm going to figure out a way to talk around it. So,
Just tell us the secrets.
so
Tell us the secrets of the depths, Greg.
the So yes, there's people that go down for long duration, and then part of it is when they come back up.
We'll call it when they get repatriated.
Correct. And then some of them go. They come up to the surface and then they'll go almost into like a recompression chamber for a long time to like run the table, or they're basically brought up in a way that that does that. But it can be. I'm talking like this isn't like a couple hours.
No, these guys. I think
these are weeks.
These guys were getting pressed. I know what you're talking about. There's a way that they're bringing them up from the pressure that they were at the bottom, and they're getting him onto the vessel, and then they're living inside of that chamber.
Into
the
the chamber, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
So there's no, like, they were down saturated enough that because I've seen that where they can make the walk. Some hard hat divers do that, but I think that's like a single dive. They're ripping their shit off, diving into the chamber, almost literally. This, and I don't know how they do it. They might bring them up from the bell, and the bell might itself connect to it.
That's what it is.
But they are going from pressure into pressure, and then over weeks being brought back up to the surface.
Yeah, or from what I understand about it, the bell can be brought up in a particular way that's happening.
Yeah.
So, but that saturation thing is for real, and
Fuck that.
You want to know another thing about it?
Yes.
Which would be not good for me. I know. I talked to some people that had done that, and most of them were like an inch or two shorter after because of the pressure on them.
You simply can't tolerate that.
I can't handle that. No. I can't go any. Come on now. I don't have any inches to spare.
I was
you know what I mean?
That job is simply not for you.
No, and they would have liked it to have been. You know what I mean? But
Holy cow.
so just think about what that's doing to you physically.
Do a lot of SDV guys, or do you know of any that go the commercial diving route afterwards just because of the or are they just completely cooked on
Most
diving?
of them are pretty cooked on it.
Yeah.
Yep. And they probably now there's a lot of divers that come out of, we had different like support units and there's some different diving groups out there that we worked with, and those guys are probably a lot better suited for it just from there. I mean, that's what they like to do. And
well, they also have the technical knowledge. You guys weren't doing welding and maintenance. And
no. And they could do that stuff. And even, I mean, you know how it is. Like we had these guys come out one time and we were getting these particular rigs we were using ready, and guys, we were just throwing them in the back of a pickup truck. They come in these cases, and
when you say that throwing in the back of the pickup truck, you don't mean in the case. So you mean just throwing.
Yeah, we were not
incredibly sensitive.
We were not using the
rig.
cases. We hadn't seen the cases for a bit, and we were like, one guy was throwing them to a guy in a truck, and the truck guy was stacking them in the back like wood. And this diver comes up to us, and he's like, are those going to like be dermoed, like thrown out?
Which means DRMO, Defense Reutilization Management Office. Basically being demilled and shit canned.
Getting thrown in the trash.
Yeah.
And we're like, no, those are going for the dive today.
Yeah,
he's like
straight to the pier, buddy.
He's like, all stop. He's like, oh, what? And he's like, where are the cases for these? We're like, cases? What are you talking about? He's like, the cases that they came in.
No, those are just the shipping cases.
We're like,
sir.
oh, we don't. And he's like, all stop.
It just exploded his brain.
I don't think we dove for a couple days while he went through like proper maintenance, storage, loading, handling.
Yeah.
And these things were, there was basically a battery in this thing that controlled the amount of oxygen that was in the system. And there was a couple of these batteries, but if you had a malfunction, it could just be the battery. And then your whole life support system was all basically ran on that battery. It'd be like if you had a Cypress that you weren't allowed to pull, and you're like, that Cypress is the only thing controlling the parachute going off. So when guys were throwing those things around,
probably not good for the battery.
Not good for the battery, not good for the overall, not good for
probably the circuit board associated with the battery that was running your life
all
support
of
system.
it. But like those guys who taught us then, the proper care of that equipment, like those guys could go do that stuff all day long. Most of the SEAL team guys just wanted to ride into where they were going, get out, and then go do SEAL stuff, and then come back out.
Suffer on the way back home.
Yeah, nobody. I don't know one single person that went into any sort of, dive-based, really anything.
Wow. This episode is brought to you by Fabric by Gerber Life. This one is such an easy topic to talk about for me because I am the father of 3 children. And every day I think about, at some point in time, am I doing enough for my kids? Part of those thoughts, not always, but sometimes I'll start going down the rabbit hole of, what if something were to happen to me? How do I take care of the people that I love? Not only do I have 3 kids, I have the most amazing partner and wife in Leah. And I want to take care of all of them. How can I do that? Life insurance. Now, here's the deal. I have watched the end of life for more than enough people from an administrative side of the house here. And there is such a difference between those that take the time to front load. And honestly, it's some hard conversations. You have to talk to the people that are around you, talk about your wishes, talk about your desires, talk about what you want to have done, and then you need to lay that out and have it concrete. When I have seen end of life, and that has happened by the individual or from the individual before they passed, the end of life is going to be complicated and emotionally distressing enough as it is. There's no easy way to slice that cookie. But layering on top of that unknown wants, desires, needs, how things want to be laid out, it is a different universe entirely. The people that have the hard conversations up front, I have seen their families do as good as possible in those moments. And for situations where I have seen people not have those conversations, I've seen it absolutely, completely unwind families. Infighting, arguments, cutting people out, horrendous. There's a couple specific points I want to read here about Fabric. Fabric by Gerber Life is a term life insurance that you can get done today. Made for busy parents like you, all online and on your schedule. You can be covered in under 10 minutes with no health exam required. If you have kids, and especially if you're young and healthy, the time to lock in your low rates is now. This again goes in line with having the hard conversations and doing the work up front. Fabric has flexible, high-quality policies that fit your family and your budget, like $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day. Fabric has partnered with Gerber Life, trusted by millions of families like yours for over 50 years. There's no risk. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee, and you can cancel at any time. And they have over 1,900 five-star reviews on Trustpilot with a rating of excellent. For anybody listening to this, you can join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. You can apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/clearedhot. That is meetfabric.com/clearedhot. Mike Echo Echo Tango fabric.com/clearedhot. Policies are going to be issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices are subject to underwriting and health questions. Back to the show. So you've known Sheehy for a while.
Yeah, him and I think we started working together in 2013.
I was going to ask you, what was the aviation business that he started here in Montana? Was it firefighter based?
It is.
Was it?
Yeah.
Does he still have it?
He does. Well,
because I'm sure there's a separation for whatever,
correct,
given his job, but
yeah, Bridger
it exists,
Aerospace.
I should say.
It does. So he started Bridger Aerospace when he got out of the Navy.
What was it called?
It's called Bridger Aerospace.
Bridger.
So
how cute. Up in Bozeman.
right
Bridger
there.
Bowl.
That's right. That's right. So Tim had been a pilot as a kid, and then and he's a super accomplished pilot. Like he flies all those planes.
Yeah.
And so he started that company. And
What was it for, though?
basically ISR, think of ISR for firefighting.
Is as far as looking for fires, or are you talking about scene control and management, looking for personnel, or probably
A little bit of all of it.
I was going to say, yeah.
And then they basically, as they grew the company, they started getting these planes. And I'm not a pilot, so my plane terminology is not perfect, but it's a scooper. So essentially it's like a seaplane, and it comes in and lands on the water, and it fills these massive tanks.
Yeah.
And then they take off,
fight fire,
dump water.
yeah.
Exactly. And they fly them basically with a buddy. So you're running 2 dropping, 2 reloading. So instead of your traditional like aerial firefighting where you have to land, refill with like fire retardant and that kind of stuff, it takes a tremendous amount of time where these things can just, continuously put water on those fires, and they do it all over the place. But I mean,
they're up here often.
They were staged up here last summer. So he started that company, ran that company, was a pilot, was the CEO. And then when he, officially committed to running for office, then he basically had to step down and out of the company. Obviously, there's contracts and things like that. So he is not involved in that company, but he started that company, ran that company, and was an active pilot and flew all those planes.
I mean, I know it's only, what's it been, 2 months?
Yeah, November.
What are his thoughts so far? And again, I know you're kind of
That's a good question.
Him, I never met the guy. So.
Yeah, you should have him on. He's super interesting.
I invited him on like fucking 6 times when he was running, and he was like, "Oh, it was actually never him. I never communicated directly with him. So
I'll get you in
can't
touch
make
with
it.
him.
We can't. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But I was like, I got an idea. Go fuck yourself.
Yeah, I can see that. But no, he, I don't know. That's you'd have to ask him that, honestly. I mean, I think
I worry about politics.
What part about it?
I can't decide if the people who want to go into politics have a natural susceptibility towards being corrupted, or if the system is so fucked that it's like toxic exposure that at some point you do become corrupted.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that in a measurement or reflection of him. It just seems really dirty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, again, right? Like you look at the system, you look at how it is right now, and you look at where we have kind of ended up.
Yeah.
And
because let's say you're somebody, you're like, this system is super fucked up. I'm going to go in and I'm going to try to change it. And you get in, and maybe there's a couple people that are like that with you, but then you realize you can't do a goddamn thing. Because even to do something which from the outside appears like movement being made, but probably in reality is a fraction of what is, what people would think it is you have to toe the party line a little bit here or there.
For sure.
Right? So then you go in, you're like, I'm going to fucking right the ship on this one. But then you realize you can't.
It's
so
kind
you
of,
can either leave or play along a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, and again, not being somebody that's in it myself, but it's no different when you show up to your platoon, you're a brand new guy, right? And you're like, I'm going to do this and this. Well, it takes some time before you actually get, so you have to be committed to, you've got to be obviously committed to what it takes to get into a position where you actually are able to influence some of those decision making.
What does it take to get into those positions?
It's, and I think, and I think that's one of those things that I'm with you. I mean, you watch it happen and you wonder, is that just kind of the natural course that happens when you get in, or are you more, are people that are more predisposed to that?
Or both. I don't know.
I think we're seeing more people now that are getting back, because at the end of the day, it is supposed to be a service position, right?
Not supposed to be an occupation.
No, and not supposed to be a way that you come out with this extreme amount of personal wealth at the end. It's supposed to be service back is the design of the system. And at some point, I believe that has been lost. And
did he talk at all about how long he would want to be there?
No, I mean, he has definitely talked about his like term limits and things.
Yeah.
And kind of getting away from this career politician. But I don't know exactly what, I think it's one of those things where you do it for the, kind of the period that you're in. And then, obviously you got to get reelected, and then you got to,
About 60% of the time was the stat that I've heard is once you are elected, 60% of the time that you have is allocated towards getting reelected immediately.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Which is fucking
crazy.
Insane.
Yeah. Yeah. You see it and you're kind of, obviously there has to be some changes. And I think you're seeing now, people are kind of waking up to the fact that the system is not functioning as it was intended to. And unfortunately, you need good people to come in there and make those changes. And you want to be encouraging good people to potentially do that, right? And
the best way to do that is to totally trash them and their family in the election process.
And ruin their businesses, their reputations.
That's the best way to get good people in there, I think.
Correct.
Yeah.
That encourages
hyper-negative campaigns.
Yeah. Other people are like, I want to do that, and
that looked awesome. Where do I sign up for that?
Yeah. And you watch good people and you're like, wow, like that's, I think it's going to be a really interesting, and I will say this, I've had some time now, like where I've met, some other people from different places that have, and I did a thing with Tim a couple weeks ago, and like I actually left there like really, I left there actually feeling far more positive.
There is in DC.
Yeah, than I was expecting, just because you realize though when you actually get, kind of some one-on-one stuff and it's not campaign based, that there are some really good people that are really trying to make a positive difference and you see kind of what that looks like and almost normalizes it but you watch, they're just trying to get some deals done. They're trying to get things across the table. And you're looking at a group of people that do care about the direction of this country. And I think we did get to a critical point where if we continued to go in the direction we were, where it's almost unrecoverable. And, again, I go back to the advice or not advice, but just my comment to him was like, as an American, I'm really glad that you're doing this, and somebody of like kind of the moral, fortitude. And it's definitely one of those things where I think people get into it, like you said, like where they're looking at this positive impact and all this stuff. And then it's probably like a lot of things where you get in there for a while and it starts to just kind of wear you down.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting. I mean, it's hard. You should have them on because it's hard to, and to be honest, like, like when we hang out and stuff, we typically aren't spending a ton of time. Like I'll be
Probably
like
the last thing on earth he wants to talk about.
exactly. And I'm gonna be like, oh, how was your week or whatever. And, but rarely am I like, what's the long term? You know what I mean? Yeah. It's more just kind of just,
Does he have any overarching plans for Montana?
I don't know.
We need him to get the Grizz back on the hunting list.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, you should have him on and hit him with all of these.
He might not be ready for it.
Well, you never know.
I don't even know the questions I have.
You have to write them out.
I would actually honestly spend more time talking with him probably about aviation.
Sure.
Yeah.
He's that is like the area that he is like.
So that was pre-military. He was already into aviation.
He was.
Okay.
Yep. And probably the area that he is and still, most passionate about. And again, it's one of those things where you can't really attack somebody's accomplishments in that space where you go, do you fly the planes or not? Right. Yeah. And
no, the way they chose to attack him on that one was, again, it was more of an ad hominem attack on the person than the fact that the technology or the platforms used to fight fires. Oh, you got a government contract to build your business, this, that, or the other. That's the angle that they took on it.
Yep.
And it's like, yeah, I did get a government contract to fucking fight fires.
To fight, like, that is how those get funded, right? And he could go through the whole thing on, and I never worked for that company. I was around and have like a good idea,
So that's in Bozeman based?
It is.
Probably at the airport.
Yep, it is right at the airport. Yep. And those planes, I mean, they fight fire. It's not just a Montana thing. They fight fire in Montana, but they fight fire all over the country.
They got about 6 months until they're very busy.
Correct.
August-ish.
But like they just flew down to Oklahoma. There's fires there.
Yeah,
they were in California.
Oh, that's right. They were, yeah.
Yeah. And people are seeing now, I mean, these these forest fires they're getting to the point where you look at what happened in Hawaii, you look at what happened in California. Something has to change with that system. I mean, it's crazy. And
I don't know what you change though.
I think you could change how, and again, I'm talking about this from I'm not an expert in any of this at all. I think you can change how you attack those fires, like right off the bat, where you get these things going, you have the fence, kind of in place. And even these scoopers are like a completely different style of fighting them.
Dude, I tell you what though, man, the Santa Anas out there, that just speaking specifically on the LA fire, I don't know how you fight a fire with 90 knot winds, triple digit winds. I mean, you looked at some of those, it literally looked like a blowtorch.
Yeah. And that was crazy. I mean, I think it is just kind of, people are, just realizing the level that those things can get to of destruction.
Mother Nature just doesn't really give two shits.
No. And I don't know what that solution is, but they've tried to implement new techniques and, you know, like you were saying, it's a mix of, you know, ISR planes that can provide real-time information to people on the ground. It's active dropping. And, you know, if you think about it, it's very similar to the military aerial, you know, construct. And
That's
it's
a natural way that stuff goes anyway.
Yeah. And these planes are, I mean, they're really interesting. And, you know, these guys that fight those fires are, I mean, they're brave guys, and I flew one. I've never flown a plane before. But we were at one of their like simulators one time, and all those guys were like, yeah, this will be funny. Like, Greg, you should get up here and fly this thing. So I'm like, all right, I'm just in the sim. And it was, I mean,
You've heard the stats on people when they're surveyed. In an emergency, do you think you could land a commercial airliner? An ungodly percentage of people will look directly at the person asking them that and be like, for sure.
I'm here to tell you, you don't want me flying that thing, because, I mean, and then you know, so you'll love this. So I was coming in to try to do one of these like water things, and they're like sitting there kind of like coaching me through it, right?
Slash laughing at you.
Well, yeah, they're laughing at me. The thing's bouncing all around. They're like turning at it. So, and I don't get seasick. I can't remember a time that I've gotten motion sick. I was ready to puke on this thing.
Really?
Oh, because like the way you're sitting and like you're seeing the horizon, and then like, and a lot of that obviously is how you're flying it. But I'm coming in to do my little landing, and I didn't feel like I didn't like where I was at. So I just reached down and I pull that through, because I'd watch guys, you know, do like touch and goes. And I was like, oh, this is what must be. So I just pull up and pull the throttle, and they're like, whoa, like, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I wasn't ready. And they're like, what was that maneuver? I'm like, touch and go. I don't know. Like, what?
Have you not seen Top Gun?
Yeah, like, what do you do? You
let him fly right by.
You just pull up and you give it the gas, but it gave me a whole new appreciation.
Yeah.
Because when you're flying over those fires, and again, I've never done it for real, but like, there's tons of turbulence.
Well, it creates its own weather.
It does.
Yeah. Flying can be complicated enough. I mean, on a bluebird day with some white puffy clouds and some terrain like where you live in Bozeman, fucking glorious. Reduced visibility by 90%, suspended smoke particles in the air, and you have to go drive at the fire where it's so hot it's creating its own weather.
Yep.
It's not the same thing.
Yep. No, it's, I mean, in the amount of hours it takes, you know, and the different ratings and things that those guys have to get.
It's pretty unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. And then again, like, that was something, I mean, Tim was a pilot on that thing. He was a nav on that. And, you know, he's not a guy that's like standing by and going, hey, you guys should go do this. I mean, he's doing all that stuff. And it's a really interesting, I mean, it's an interesting space. It's definitely like an emerging area.
It's needed up here too.
It is.
There was, I mean, I wasn't joking when I said they have about 6 months until they're busy. It's either Canadian fires blowing smoke down here, or our own ones that start, whether it be from people accidentally or arson, or most of the time, honestly, it's lightning.
Yep.
There was a fire started a few years ago over a property dispute. You could literally see where the person lit it and it just went right downwind, uphill, the V, like a perfect V.
Yep.
And holy cow, man, I was on just the app where you can watch the air traffic. They had spotter planes up there. They had the scoopers. They had the seaplanes. They had the big ones going down to Missoula to get filled up with the red stuff, fire retardant.
Yep.
Crazy. And then as soon as they were done there, they're off doing it somewhere else.
Yeah.
Nonstop for that whole season.
Yeah. It's not, once those planes leave, they, you know, like, again, they might not come back if they're in Oklahoma and then they go somewhere else. And it's just kind of following now. And you're seeing, I mean, there was a fire in Long Island the other day. Did you see that on the news? There was like a wildfire in Long Island, and it was like not like crazy, but yeah, it's a cool company, and again, that was like one of those things that they tried to just.
They came at him hard on that one.
Oh, big time. And that again was like, you know, if you have a company that is in the government space, you're reliant on government contracts. That's the business, right? And, but yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
So obviously the move, once you get out of the military, specializing in very, very long dives is to start a cattle company in
Correct.
Montana. One naturally leads to the other.
Yes.
Most guys getting out of SDVs, I've heard, do this.
They
Dude,
do.
bring me up to
They
speed
do.
on Little Belt. How many years have you been at it this point? Because the first time you've been on before, 2 years ago?
I think, it was 2 or 3 years ago.
You had been at it a bit.
Yeah, we had just kind of gotten started.
Yeah.
We've come quite a bit further down the road at this point. But yeah, we really started it full on in 2020. There was some prep going into that. And through that process, honestly, the COVID thing was the first time we really thought about doing this full vertically integrated local supply chain and looking at, and to be honest, like looking back now, like if we had known all the different things that it takes to get there, I can't say that we would 100% made that decision again. However, I'm glad that we did, and we've worked like really hard to build this vertically integrated system. And in the cattle industry, it's a very phase line business where, I would be one portion of it. You would buy, those cattle from me. You would grow them to another phase. Michael would buy them and he'd take them to another phase. He would sell them to somebody else. And you don't actually see a lot of feedback on how those cattle perform after your phase. So I would explain it as like, it'd be like if you made wine or beer or something and you just had one portion of that, but you never saw the end result or tried that product. How do you know how your operational decisions and things are?
I didn't realize it was that segmented.
It is. In Montana, is you see a lot of cows in Montana, and traditionally those cows produce calves that then get bought and go into the Midwest, and they continue to grow and get finished in the Midwest, and then they'll go into kind of large national programs. But yeah, I think it's 2% of the cattle that are, that start in Montana get consumed in Montana. That may not be perfect, but that's the stat that I've heard. The rest of the Montana basically is the factory for producing calves that then go into beef production as a system, and they traditionally go into the Midwest, get grown, get finished, processed, distributed.
You do see a lot of calves here
You do.
for a short period of time.
Yeah, like you'll see them basically from, you'll start seeing them, call it February 1st through, early summer. And what that is you have cows that are the factory, and that would be the cow-calf component, or kind of the first step in that process. And then those cows every year produce that calf. The females basically come kind of like back around into replacing numbers, getting sold as bred cows for operations that are growing, and the males typically go into kind of the beef production pipeline. With that being said, what we ended up doing then was keeping all of those phases, keeping those cattle in our own system, and taking them through that whole thing. So that gives you basically quality assurance from start to finish. We literally start with the genetic selection that is going to basically do two things. It gives those cattle they got to have the genetic capacity and the nutrition to get to a point of performance that we're like shooting for in our beef program. But that's on average, it's about a 24-month process.
From flash to bang.
Yes, correct. Okay. So if you think about it, even just from a business capital perspective, you basically put, let's just say $1 in when that calf hits the ground, and you don't see it come back to you and usually it's not even just 24 months, because then you got to sell that beef. So it's probably another like 30 to 45 days. So the capital, that it takes to take those cattle all the way through that system is why it's segmented traditionally like it is.
That makes sense.
And it's not a bad system by any means. The system works very well. The thing that you don't get then with that system, though, is the ability to trace those animals all the way through that entire process. And so what we ultimately wanted to do, and what we saw, kind of with the beginning of COVID, especially when people couldn't get beef at the grocery store, was our actual first plan was, how do you put Montana beef back into Montana communities? And that started us down that road. And we basically have gone from filling, 2 or 3 in like a horse stock trailer to filling a stock trailer to a stock trailer and draft to now we're killing full semi loads on a very regular basis. So we basically have a ratable supply chain of 12 months where every single month you have the right number of cattle being finished at the right time.
Makes sense.
And so for us, we do a grass-fed grain finish program. And so we were partnered in a feed yard in Billings. And so those cattle go into there, get finished on grain, and then we're processing those, and then we're doing all the distribution. So we work with a bunch of restaurants locally, and then we also have an online presence now that people can just go on and order. We actually just finished up doing a deal with Black Rifle they've got a bunch of like partner folks at their subscription.
God damn it, Coffee Club.
The Coffee Club. So we're working with them now. So if you're a Black Rifle Coffee Club subscriber, you can find Little Belt Cattle Company on there. There's a discount code specifically for those guys that are subscribers, and they can go on and order and catch a discount and get 100% Montana beef.
Where's your guys' ranch in relationship to Bozeman? My son now goes to MSU.
Okay, we're 90 miles northeast of Bozeman.
Is that up by like White Sulphur?
It is. We're east of White Sulphur and west of Harlowton.
Okay. I don't know that second one.
It's cool. It's the Little Belts. That's where our name came from.
Do you have elk that harass your cows?
They don't really harass our cows, but we do have elk.
Do they need to be shot?
We actually have some. We're getting some better bulls. But yeah, they do. One of the kids that works for us shot a really nice bull this year.
You have a bunch of antelope, right?
We do. We have good antelope too.
Dude, I haven't drawn an antelope tag in
Really?
3 fucking years.
Interesting.
I also
Because that used to be like 99%.
Yes.
Yeah.
I only know of 1 or 2 people that have. They made the change to the 920 tag, which is what I used to put.
That's
in
the one you
archery.
get the statewide one.
Well, it doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, I didn't know that.
They segment it into districts,
Interesting.
which I know nothing about.
I thought the 920 was that it's archery only, but you got any district, and then the rifle one you had to.
In my understanding, that's what it was as well. It was
Okay.
it was a tag that had a pretty large swath of public land use.
Yep.
My understanding, though, is that they carved that into 13 or 16 different districts. So now you have to apply for that particular district.
Got it. And to be honest, with the amount of beef carcasses that I deal with at this point, I have not been hunting nearly as much as I used to. We always get veg, and that was a funny one. We can talk about that too. They were hitting us on all this like public access stuff, which was just completely false. Like couldn't be more false.
Were they saying that you guys
we were
had-
blocking public access is what they were claiming.
And for people who don't understand that issue, this is a contentious one in Montana.
Mm-hmm.
The Big Sky State. They call it that because of how amazing it can look, how big the sky can look. Huge sectors of national forests, state lands, public land. But what you'll find in some of the most epic elk hunting areas are ranches. And let's say that this everyday Fieldcraft water, which is probably filled by Mike Glover's garden hose in his backyard. Let's say this is like right here is the western edge of a great hunting area. You'll see these ranches that wrap all the way around, and you can't just walk on private property. So it becomes privately locked in public land.
And that's one of the best
People
parts.
get fucking heated.
They do. One of the best things about being a resident of Montana is the access to
Guaranteed tag,
public
over the
ground
counter. Yeah.
that you can that is like it is yours to recreate on, right? And there's now I will say this, the way that is set up, there is access points to a lot of that ground, but there is stuff that is blocked.
Not accidentally.
No, it obviously like there's some things there where it definitely adds to the value of that ground, but this I don't know the spirit of it, but a lot of that ground does have access points. Some of it doesn't, but the intent was that there was public access points that people could go to access that public ground. We have a
BMAs, right? Block management
they
access.
have block management. There's state sections and there's federal.
Okay.
We have a county road that basically divides the ranch on the east and the west that ends at one of those access points. We use that access point because we have cattle leases that allow us to graze up there in for certain periods of time. So we use that just as much as anybody else.
Your cows are just up there fucking about?
Yes.
Do you ever lose them?
No, we're actually pretty good about it. Takes some time sometimes to find them, but
The problem cows?
yes. And it's a lot of ground to cover,
Yeah.
and it's
Sounds like a lot of time on horseback.
it is a lot of time on horseback. And typically we do, I mean, we always get them all back. It's just a matter of if they all come. Once you actually get them kind of going, they typically will start coming in together, and but you might have a group that doesn't see the rest of them. And, and then you got to count them in, just like inventories in the military. You kind of know like, hey, we're down this many, and then you got to go find them. And what can be really funny is when somebody's like, yeah, we're down 5. And then in actuality, you're not, and you're out there actually looking for stuff that doesn't exist. But that's a different story.
That also sounds like the military.
Yeah. But this road like goes right across the ranch. And what they were saying was, and what they were trying to portray was that blocking access would mean we barricaded that road off and disallowed people to go to that public area and
Which would be their portal. So think of a road, like this seam is a road. This is your access point. Everything past this is public, so people can use that to gain the gateway to the public. Yeah.
Correct. We have never once in any capacity blocked any amount of, you couldn't make an argument. We use that just as much as anybody else. What we don't allow is for people to openly cross private property to access public ground outside of that access point. So we had a guy, he calls, I want to say he was from MSNBC, but I don't know if I'd put, I can't be for sure.
He was from media.
Okay, media. Yeah. Michael, you can edit that part out.
No, we're leaving that shit in. Maybe it was MSNBC.
I could look it up in my phone. I don't feel like
say
a
traditional media source.
Okay, traditional big media source. Guy calls me up. He's like, hey, I was hired to write an article about how you and Tim Sheehy basically run a fake ranch and that you block public access to the public. And I'm like, first question out of my mouth, I'm like, you're paid to write this or you're a journalist writing a story? Well, I'm a journalist writing a story. Well, then how are you paid to write this? That just sounds like
You get paid for the story when he submits it.
But he had somebody say, this is the story we want you to write.
Oh, for sure.
So we go through the whole thing. I explained to him what I just explained. And I said, listen, you could look at stuff that we've been putting out since 2020 on the ranch. You're actually more than welcome to come out at any time. However, you gotta stay for 3 days. You got to run my schedule, and you got to be out with our crew for 72 hours. If you can't make it 72 hours, the title of the article has to be, I couldn't make it on a fake ranch for 72 hours.
I would read that article.
He was like, I don't think that's necessary. I'm like, it's an open invite. You can see. And his chances of doing that were quite slim, would be my guess. So we go through the whole thing. I'm like, look, we've never blocked. So we have this like pretty good constructive conversation that ultimately ended with, I'm like, look, if you had a house, there was a lake behind your house with a beach, and a mile down the road, there was a parking area that people could park at, access the lake, sit on the beach and have a great time. Would you let them walk through your house to get to the beach? And he's like, well, no. I'm like, okay, then you can't have a problem with there's public access that allows you to get to that. If there has been cases in Montana where people block that.
For sure.
And I'm 100% with everybody against that. I'm telling you right now, there has not been a single incident ever that we've ever blocked public access. Do we allow everybody to come walking across the ranch? Keep in mind, we also...
Well, those are two different things. Blocking public access on that road and then allowing people onto private property to take a shortcut are two different fucking things.
That's what exactly. And keep in mind, like part of my job also, like we've got a lot of livestock. We have a team of people, and in their safety and security is something that I have to take into consideration where, we have people that come across, they leave, whether they leave gates open, they don't know where we are. They don't know where our animals are. It just becomes a safety issue. And there's different programs out there that private property can participate in. And, I know some places that are in those programs and some places that aren't. for us, it did not, because we're running a full working ranch, it didn't make sense for what we were doing. And they were trying to beat us up on that. And that was like a big one that they were really trying to, and again, in those ads, complete false information about, the number of acres that is owned, the access points. I mean, you could look this stuff up.
You could go into Onyx and click
and
on your
find
ranch.
it.
Yeah.
It would take you 30 seconds to find the actual information. And instead, they're just putting out false information to paint a narrative that isn't true. And they really did. They tried very hard to very, very much negatively affect our business. And, to be honest, we just stayed the course and did what we've been doing and just stuck to trying to produce the best cattle and the best beef we can. Here we are, though. We hire a lot of veterans. We hire rural people in Montana. We're putting beef back into our communities and not just into, restaurants and our online thing. Like, we do a bunch of school districts. And the way we're able to do that is because we also sell into high-end restaurants. And that helps offset the cost of putting 100% Montana beef back into, and that's something we're super proud of. And we were doing that not so I could sit here and tell you about it. It never came up on Tim never mentioned it. I'm just saying that in that when we think about putting it back into the community, that's on a much broader scale than just, hitting different, kind of business points. It's something I'm super proud of, that we're putting the same quality that's going to some top restaurants, top places. And that's what, the places that we're supplying beef to, that's what those kids are getting as well. And it's been super interesting. We've learned a ton just about, kind of what does that take? And it's one of those things where, if you haven't thought about it a lot, but when you need like a specific number of cattle that, almost weigh the exact same at the specific amount of time, month over month, because what you can't have, and what a lot of people run into when they try to go down this road, is they'll have, a certain amount of supply in the freezer, customers start buying, they run out, and then they can't restock for, and then all of a sudden those customers go somewhere else.
Yeah, that's not an overnight solution.
No. And it's never been easier now to access like local beef, and I call it local, but like wherever you live. And what we ultimately built and still, are doing and growing is we want people to be able to know exactly who and where that food is coming from. And I think that's a big shift you're now seeing in America as a whole. And it's similar to the hunting thing. Like, once you start doing that, people want to know, number one, what they're eating. They want to know how it was raised. They want to know where it came from, who it came from, all those things. And as we've kind of built that out, that's what we've been wanting to give people, because a lot of people have no idea. They've lost the connection of, you go to the grocery store, you grab a steak. It's not like pulling out a steak from an elk that you shot, where there's a,
where there's suffering associated.
Suffering, and like you remember who you were with. And again, you're not going to be able to give people that exact feeling, and that's not what we're trying to do, but we are trying to rebuild a connection to where people go, I want to buy a Little Belt beef because I feel good about the people making it. I feel good about how that's happening. I feel about, the way that those cattle are managed. And I feel good that I know that entire system of how that beef was produced and processed. And that's basically what we have been doing. And you don't see hardly anybody, startup, when I tell people like we're a startup ranch, they laugh. And, but it's actually been a great, there's so many parallels to like military stuff where, you have this great plan and then you go out to do it and all of a sudden it doesn't work. And you're like, but
don't tell people our secrets. It always works exactly as planned.
Yeah. But like your ability to actually, kind of feel when the momentum has shifted a little bit and you're like, oh, we got to make a course correction. I actually feel like we are extremely good at that. And, we've kind of taken stuff, even the way we kind of go like, hey, this is the plan for the day. This is, the primary target, or let's just say gate or whatever. Like, hey, we want to go through this gate. There's a secondary gate over here. The goal is to get them here. However we get there, but it allows people to make decisions on the fly, recognize that they might not want to go that way. And it's going to be a lot easier to go that way. Right. And it's one of those things, there's a lot of skilled to it. It's one of those things just, similar to the military when you go, oh, I've got this. Like I am good to go. Like you will be humbled.
What does a 72-hour schedule look like for you? What was that journalist, if he had rogered up to it, what was he signing up for?
That's a great question. It's a little bit dependent on the time of year.
Well, I assume that you would have rogered him up for a very arduous 72 hours.
Yeah, so we would have, I remember it was probably like either late spring, early summer. And so it would have looked something, we would have been, probably, getting out of bed somewhere, by 4. You're getting up, you're eating, you're getting your lunch and whatever you need for the day kind of packed. You're going out and catching a horse. You're loading a horse typically by...
What do you mean you're catching a horse?
Well, your horses typically are in some sort of corral or like pasture. And then you go out and it's nothing fancy. You just basically,
How do you pick which one you want?
You typically are on some sort of rotation. Right. So you want to, you'll have a certain string of horses that you ride, and then you kind of manage, what you're doing, which one you're taking. And also there's sometimes it's what are you doing for the day and what horse is better suited for that. And so you'll catch your horse, get your horse ready, and then basically load up and kind of meet at a central location, and then people will go out from there. And the task could be gathering cattle from a big pasture into a group and moving them to another pasture. It could be, it could be preparing a pasture where you're going around all the fence, you're making sure the water, everything's ready for them to go to that next one. It could be branding calves. It could be, it's very seasonal and kind of age class size dependent. But a lot of it also is healthcare. So you're going through, you're looking at all those cattle, you're if there's ones that are sick, you're giving them care. You're just, you're managing the overall well-being, but you're on large pastures. Like, it's not like they're all together.
Yeah.
And so and then you're, in the summer, that you're pretty much gone all day, and then coming back that evening, you got to put all your horses up, you got to get things fed, you got to get prepped for the next day. And, by the time you're eating and back in bed, it feels like you're doing it pretty quick again. And it like in the winter, the operational tempo is very much there, but it's not as intensive as like the spring, summer, and fall.
Shorter days too.
And we're feeding cattle at that point. So we put hay up in the summertime, and then basically we're plowing snow and feeding those cows between, for us, it's basically about January through, like, let's just call it like April 1st, that every day those cattle get fed.
Yeah.
And
do you use those big, it's not a ball, it's like a roll of hay?
It is. Yep.
Is it true that those things can start themselves on fire?
They can get spontaneously
That
combust.
shit is wild.
Yeah. So when you stack them from like,
it's from the moisture, right?
It is, correct.
Yeah.
Yep. So if the moisture content, believe it or not, is too high, you can have
a spontaneously
combustion
combusting hay roll.
Correct. And then, that hay is like valuable. There's a, price per tons and whatnot. I don't know what the average is right now. I bet it's somewhere like around like $160 a ton, something like that. So for insurance purposes, you can only stack so much hay in a stack, or it has to be spaced out, because if it caught fire, it's a lot of money burning up.
That'd be a great way to stay warm in the winter, I guess.
Next to the
burrow yourself into one of those things.
Yeah, so you have to be very careful when you put hay up. There's very specific moisture content, like parameters, that you have to stay within.
Did you know this, Michael?
No, we talked about it like a couple podcasts ago for some reason.
You know what I'm talking about, right? Those big they're not spirals at all, but those big rolls.
Yeah. So what happens is you grow that grass. You cut it basically with a swather, but it's just like basically a giant lawnmower, right? And then you use this thing called a rake, and it puts basically it'll take 2 lines of cut hay and put it into one, but it also kind of turns it over.
Yep.
And then you let that dry for a certain amount of time, and then you come and roll it into the bales.
Yeah.
And that time that it sits on the ground, all of that has, a certain amount of time that it can do that to get to the right moisture content to go into that. It's kind of one of those things where, you see those bales and like, you don't think about what, like that
fire
stuff.
instantaneously starting inside of it. Yeah. You don't think about
And
that
then,
at all.
you like for us, like we think about like, what's like the protein content of that. There's different types of hay. There's different, and you're paying for the, higher quality, and there's different kind of mixes of different grasses and things. And all of those are going to have nutritional impact on those cattle. And, when those cows basically come in from the fall to the winter, you basically want them at kind of a certain condition. And what you don't want to be doing is trying to put condition on those cows because it'll cost you a ton of money.
Yeah.
You want to be able to maintain where they're at so that through the winter, you got to bring them in looking pretty good.
Yeah.
And then you don't want them to backslide, but you don't want them coming in skinny where you have to put on weight.
Do they just eat all day? If they're out there
No,
grazing?
I mean, they've got a specific amount of hay that each one gets. We would call it like per it's
No, I mean, like when
pounds.
they're out grazing.
Oh, when they're grazing. Yeah. They eat
They're
and then
just
they lay
lawnmowers,
down.
just meow, 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 meow,
Yeah,
meow.
you'll see them like they eat and then they lay down. They kind of ruminate where they just kind of sit there and then they get up and they're actually, it's interesting. Like when you watch cattle a lot, they almost follow a similar routine as elk or wild animal or whatever, where, they'll at night in the morning and in the evenings, they really start to spread out. And then kind of during the day, as it gets hot, they kind of suck back into like water sources, shade, they lay out, and then they kind of get up and same thing. They kind of work their way back out. And, it's pretty fascinating. And there's a number of different ways that you can kind of manage cattle for performance. And so a big thing for us is we do a lot of different pasture rotations. And so we'll gather those cattle. There's a big thing where you basically you're putting the right number of cattle on the right size acreage for the right amount of time.
That makes sense.
You've probably heard of overgrazing.
Yeah.
Okay. So like, do you think overgrazing is a function of number of animals or time?
I guess it could be both, right?
It could be, but if you had to pick one or the other, what do you think it is?
Probably numbers.
So that's what everybody thinks. But if you think about it, it's actually a function of time. So if you had 1,000 animals on 1 acre for 1 minute, and I'm making this up, that could be perfectly grazed. But if they were there for 2 minutes, it would be overgrazed, right? So you really have to figure out like what is basically the volume of forage per acre, and then the number of cattle that are on there, and how many days can that number of cattle be there to get like the desired amount of grazing you want. And then you're moving them. And what's interesting is every time you're moving them, you're basically moving them onto fresh feed versus the other style would be is you turn those cattle out and they just stay out there for a certain amount of time. And then you pull them off, which would be more of like an open grazing versus a rotational grazing, where with that rotational grazing, you're really able to mirror the nutritional needs of those cattle at that time for whatever the goal is to the type of ground that you're putting them on. And a lot of that has to do with what type of, grass is growing at what time. So for instance, if you're going up into the mountains, that grass is going to come in later than stuff down at lower elevation.
That makes sense. How many head do you guys have now?
We are running, there's about 800 cows that'll have calves. There's about 500 yearlings for the beef program that'll come back in May, and about another 250 females that'll come back into a breeding program. So that's like 1,500-ish there on the ranch. And then we have about another like 500 or so on feed that are in that finishing process.
What was it in 2020 when you came on?
Oh, man. It was a lot less. We probably had... Oh man, that's a good question because we had some cattle with. We weren't doing the yearling thing yet. We were like very much just getting into the beef stuff.
Yeah.
But we only had a couple at a time. Where now we have like I was saying, like a pretty systematic approach.
Yeah, I feel like it was in the tens or low hundreds at most.
No, we had a couple because we started.
I mean, in the beef program.
In the beef program, we only, no, I don't even think we had killed, I don't think we killed like 100 total that year. I have to look back on when I came back in, but we really stair-stepped our numbers, but it's one of those things we were killing like 2 or 3 at a time and we were selling through that. And then another couple. And then as we got more and more business, we were killing more and more, where now we almost have it to where it's almost pre-allocated to where as that semi load gets processed, it's like, okay, a certain amount of this goes here, a certain amount of this, because you have to move all of it. And something that's cool is, I mean, we literally move like from beef cheeks to oxtail and everything in between. And
I have no fucking clue what you just said.
so, I mean, literally head to toe
Okay.
on those cattle carcasses, every pound, right, that you put on the rail is worth some sort of
I bet.
amount, right? And you're trying to get the yield of the amount, of usable, whether it's beef or product, right, into some sort of market. So, we've got a dog food company that buys our, basically they call it offal, but it's entrails. It's your heart, your lungs, your livers, and they freeze dry that and they use it for dog food. Yep. For every one tenderloin customer you have to have a certain amount of people that are selling grind. So we have a gal that works for us who's awesome. She was a C-17 pilot in the Air Force and didn't have any experience in this. Allison Snow's her name. And she made this amazing Excel spreadsheet that like she can jam in like how many cattle, and then it we call it the calculator, and it kicks out like, okay, this is how many of this.
Please tell me you mean calculator.
Calculator.
Okay.
That's the, and so she'll have to sit there and like figure out like, this is where everything is going. And, we've gotten really good then at all the different outlets that we need. And that's one of the things that I think is cool about like what we're doing. We have a direct to consumer component. We also have a, kind of a wholesale restaurant component, and we've got a market that we work with as well. And by having those different outlets, it gives us the ability to move all those cattle. It also gives us the ability to not have to force customers to, a lot of programs, it's like, oh, if you want a ribeye, you get 20 pounds of grind, right? Because you got to move all of that.
Yeah, for sure.
And what we've kind of been able to build out now is the ability for people to pick and choose what they want. And we'll do like curated boxes.
Yeah. Which is super industry standard anyway.
Completely. And we're doing one for Memorial Day. The funds, a certain proceeds of those funds are going to Wars in Quiet Waters. And that's something, again, we kind of timed with the Black Rifle thing, and we'll put some like boxes together like that where you get a couple things. It's like a one click, or you can just go on and pick what you want and, build your own box. They ship it to you and you get it in your door. And that's what I'm saying. Like the ability to buy locally now has never been easier, and the access to like healthy, high quality food has never been easier, but it's also never been harder because you can also go down to, grocery stores in different places, and you don't realize the amount of imported beef that you're getting from other places that you have no idea where it came from, no idea what, program that those followed.
Which is wild if you think about it, the beef production in the U.S. And if you do look at a lot of the steaks at the grocery store, they're from Oconus. They're from outside of the United States.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's, and I think you're seeing a shift now to this, back to this like made in America and knowing your rancher and, farm to table, whatever you want to call it. And people have, whether it's local farmers markets, whether it's online. And, I talk about this all the time. I'm like, a prerequisite for liking Little Belt Cattle Company doesn't mean that you don't have to like everybody else, right? And there's different people that are making great beef that's going to be very different depending on like how that beef is raised and finished. And, it depending on the experience you're looking for, you're able to find that now. And, I'm a huge proponent of like, if you're buying locally, you're buying from U.S. producers, you're buying in a way that's supporting, smaller producers that are doing that, here in America, then you're helping rebuild, regrow that system. Because as you think about it, the more acres that come out of that system, whether those are recreation, because you see a lot of ranches now that, are at a point where they are either selling, they don't have that next generation that's coming in to take over. And typically, you're seeing those acres leave production agriculture. And at some point, how does that system sustain itself when you're not replacing those acres someplace else, right? And like, I truly believe that, food security is national security. If you have one of the things that makes America amazing. And when you travel a lot and you leave the country, you see this is our access to high quality, nutrient dense food is a major competitive advantage when you compare that to a lot of other places.
Yeah, for sure. What's harder, being a SEAL or first generation rancher? Strip the SDV out of it.
Yeah. No, that's a good question. They're
I
both,
feel like the SDV would be harder.
yeah, they're both, they're similar in their challenges of that. For me, it's something that I really, number one, wanted to do, very much wanted to be good at, very much spent a lot of time doing the reps to get to the point where, you know, no different than being a new guy and you see somebody that's been doing it a long time. You're like, I'm going to be like that guy. Right. But it takes that commitment and it takes doing those reps to get good at it. And similar to where, you know, you feel like you're a small part in, there's a similar purpose there where you feel like you're feeding people, you're providing a high quality product for people, and you're doing a service. And, you know, they're different, but they're very similar. You know, you're dealing with great people, but also like a lot of kind of type A personalities that are like, oh, I want to do like this. I want to do like that. And
would you rather ranch or get in the back of the SDV?
Ranch all day long, all day long. No question. No ranch, but then also you got to be out there when, you know, there's times where it's, you know, -30, -40. Those, when you have livestock, you are making a commitment that like you are providing the highest level of care that you can for those animals. And we really go overboard on the put it this way, in the prioritization of our business and how like cash gets allocated, we will always prioritize the health and well-being of the cattle over anything else. And, you know, it's one of those things where we've had the same crew now for a couple years. We have a fantastic crew, and no different when you get used to working with the same people for a long time. You know, you're just like kind of that flow state happens and you don't talk a lot. You're just out there doing it. Everybody kind of knows their role. You're just filling in, and it's really enjoyable when you get into that. And it's cool. Like you're producing something that wasn't there, and in seeing those cattle going like all the way through that, I'm really proud of the performance of the program we've put together, not only on the live cattle side, but on the beef side as well. And the beef side, you can market and you can do all the things. You can get that product out there. On the live cattle side, it's more, I would say, like reputation driven. You could spend all day marketing, and people on the live cattle side, they either think that you add value to their program or they don't. And they show it in the way that they bid on those cattle. And we've had, you know, times where we've been, you know, the top selling group of certain age classes of cattle. That is a big reflection of like the performance we've built into that program. And so when people were knocking us and stuff during that, I'm like, okay, then if we're not a real ranch, like what is, right? And
how much impact did the negativity of the campaign actually have? Did you guys feel it?
We did. We felt it on, and I completely get this, you know, the restaurant business, especially in, you know, kind of the markets that we sell into, is extremely competitive. A lot of those people, you know, don't want any reason why somebody wouldn't stay or go to their restaurant.
I mean, they're fighting for dollars too.
They are. We did though. We lost probably leading up the last couple months. We were not losing, but we had about $8,000 to $10,000 of sales decline from businesses that were like, look, nothing against you guys. We like the product. We like you guys. Like we don't want any political affiliation. Yeah. And I was like, hey, that's fair. You know, there was a number of those folks that were very honest with me and just said, look, and then there were some that just ghosted us. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, so when you're pre-allocating that product, you're like, okay, so should we go? And they're just not getting back to you. And then you hear from somebody else, or eventually, you see these posts or comments that they make and you're like, oh, okay, I get this now. I will say this, we were able to find new customers, and we found like more customers, as we went.
Yeah.
But it definitely was, it's just, we are a beef company that we're like, look, like we're trying to sell beef to everybody, right? Like if you're looking for good, high quality, 100% Montana beef, like we'll sell it to you. And so as you start seeing those sales decline,
it sucks.
It does suck. And especially as like you're building and growing your business,
Or trying
and
to.
you guys probably see this at times, right? Where like if somebody doesn't like Black Rifle for whatever reason,
Every fucking election cycle, it's the Act Blue thing, where Black Rifle is somehow the Manchurian candidate for the Democratic Party. Because I think there's a total of $1,500 associated with Black Rifle on Act Blue. And I actually got curious enough about it that I went on there and did a donation under Gray Rifle Coffee under my own name, just to prove that you can put down whatever the fuck you want to.
Yeah.
It'd be a great psychological operation to just paper something like that, because you could paint a picture that whoever you are targeting now has to fight uphill to defend. And people forget that there's like
100%.
$55,000 on Win Red from
Yeah.
BRCC. That's left out of the conversation. Evan donated $500 to Tulsi one time, who, by the way, is now a fucking Republican and
And fantastic.
and the DNI.
Yeah. And so you guys know, and it's not necessarily even a reflection of you going like, oh, you're like, hey, you probably feel the same way, right? You're like, hey, if you want a great cup of coffee, the doors, it doesn't say on the door, you can't come in.
Yep.
Depending on how you vote, right? Like we don't ask, I'm sure you don't either. Like we've never said to an
No,
employee.
we ask at the terminal.
Yeah. And then if they say
Well, we
the wrong
take their
thing-
card and
yes,
say, just
yes,
before we
yes.
make this, who'd you vote for?
Yeah.
No, we don't fucking do that.
Exactly. And you'd be a lunatic if
It'd be fun to do for like a Friday.
It'd be funny. But from a business perspective,
You would go under.
exactly. And so it was just like one of the, and obviously that was their intention. And I think again, for us, we just said, hey, this is who we are. This is what we do.
Yeah.
This is what our focus is. It hasn't changed. You can go back and listen to our first podcast.
Yeah, that was
and what
the same.
I'm saying is the same,
Yeah.
right? Like we haven't changed our goal. We haven't changed our what we do. We've gotten a lot better at it. We've gotten a lot more efficient at it. We've done a lot in a short period of time in an industry that traditionally, it's I say all the time, it's like building pyramids, because you have to have you're building a reputation in quality and consistency that just, it takes time to do that. And we've done that now. And I will say this, for every customer that we lost during that time, we had customers that strengthened their numbers and relationships with us. And now, like, we're not going back to those other places and going like, hey, like we're like, hey, we pre-allocate.
It sorts itself.
It does. And you just have to be patient enough and just know that, your quality and what you're doing is there, and stay true to like who you are and what you do. And it does sort itself out, but it's frustrating when you have people. I mean, we could
You
do,
can't engage in it.
No.
You just got to let it go.
we could do 2 more podcasts about dumb stuff that people said to me, my wife, Tim's wife. I'm sure to him as well, where, you're just like, what are you talking about? Like, what are you serious right now? And they're like, well, we would never buy this from you. And you're like, okay, like,
Have you considered we don't want you as a customer?
yeah. And eventually you get to that point where you're just kind of like, okay, cool. Then like just go someplace else, and that's perfectly fine. And once, what's really funny though, like literally the day after the election, it was like it never happened, and it was just completely back to. We haven't heard one thing about it since. Not one person has been like,
Real soon. What's he elected for? 4 years?
6.
Well, 4 years from now, you'll start.
We'll hear it again, but that's all right. We'll be like further.
6 years?
6 years Senate. Yep. Yep. Yeah, that's a big one. Like to come into for your first go round, the weight of that campaign. They knew it too. And I mean, he came in to for real for his first elected position in any capacity, you know, and I think at the end of the day, right, like and you guys know this, with you know, you stand by the people you support, and it's not necessarily based on, you know, how do they used to vote, or what. It's like, are they a good person? Are they in line with the values of what we're doing? Are they trying to do a good job? And you support those people, you support your friends, and you just gotta, you know, but it is not easy to do that. Like on that, it got easier to do it the longer you did it, because there was nothing you could do about it either. Like I finally got to the point where I'm like, it doesn't matter it matters what we do. It doesn't really matter what we say. And we don't have any control over what's coming next anyway. Yeah. But then you look at the people they're pulling out of the woodwork, and you're like, okay, so these are like, you're not talking varsity level people coming out and going. And we had just as many people that stood up for us. Yeah. Especially in the ranching and agriculture space. Like we had just as many, like really, I mean, the people that you want on your team were coming out and, you know, speaking on Tim's behalf, speaking on our behalf.
Well, the fake rancher narrative, I don't think would work again because it didn't work the first time.
It didn't.
So they'd have to take a different angle.
Correct. And when it fell flat, it was funny because then they stopped going in that direction pretty clearly. And then they started hitting other things. And
I wonder what they'll go with next.
I don't know. It'll be well, at least he'll have like, and not that they really care, but he'll have a track record now of policy and votes and things. And they were just so desperate in trying to keep their guy in that they'd have done and said anything to make that happen. And, you know, that was the funniest part. I'm like, you can easily find out, like, especially in that space, like, like we've been out. It's not like we don't do anything like where we're like, oh, we've never, like, we're pretty public about, you know, what we do, how we do it. And also the fact that, like, you know, we're not perfect. Like we're figuring it out, we're changing things, we're learning, but you know, we want to, we've always been very transparent and honest about who we are and what we do. And so it was just funny because it's like anybody could go on with 5 minutes.
No, that's where you're fucked up.
Exactly. It is. And that's what I learned. I was like, you can't expect, and then you just got to go like, all right, cool. Like that's just.
What city do you guys ship from if people order?
So we actually work, we've got we tried doing distribution ourselves. That was not the right way to go.
You don't like packing boxes with dry ice?
No. And at the volume we were doing it, we quickly were like, this is unsustainable.
Yeah, let's go ahead and outsource this.
So we've got 2 programs we work with. There's a company called CrowdCal that you basically can just go to our website and then click buy beef, and it kicks you over to their page. But you can build boxes independently there. They've actually got 4 now. They've got shipping facilities out of Oregon, California, Dallas, and Pennsylvania. Okay. And so you order usually within like 36, 48 hours
it's gonna be
on your door.
To the order,
Yep. And they're a really cool company. Like they're like very tech-based, very efficient in how they do that.
Yeah, that's what you need for that section of the business.
100%. I mean, it's you got to be good at you got to know like what you're good at and or what you want to be good at and what you don't, right? They've been a fantastic partner. We've been working with them for a year. They're great on like marketing stuff. They're great at, we go like, hey, we want to do this, we want to do that. They're super good. And the way that that works, just kind of like the timing and stuff for our business, it works really well. And then we're also working with a guy that is doing kind of a veteran coalition, Ballard Provisions, he's calling that. And he's doing more of a, like shares, where if you wanted to buy like an eighth or a quarter or a half, he's doing more of like a volume based thing. And people can check that out as well if that's what they're, you know, it really just depends on kind of how your buying style is, because you could do a subscription model, and then, you know, like I was saying, we have a partnership with a market in Bozeman that people can go to.
I've seen your guys' stuff on the menus there.
Yeah, and then we're in a lot of restaurants now, and we've had some, you know, and our kind of next step is you know, probably even expanding that portion of it a little bit. And what's cool is people come to Montana and, they have a good experience. They get 100% Montana beef experience, and then they can go to wherever they're at.
Yeah,
and now,
same thing on the doorstep.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
Michael wanted me to ask this. He was too afraid to. He wanted to know what you guys do with the assholes. He likes onion rings.
Sure. I will actually ask.
He was wondering, could he get a package of that?
So believe it or not, like all that stuff.
You're welcome, Michael.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Believe it or not, they have got a home for everything. And you go to these processing plants and
leave nothing to waste.
nothing. No, it's amazing. You go to these larger, mid-sized processing plants, and I mean, it's like when these cattle start coming through, it is.
I'm telling you, I think that it's an O-ring. It's an onion ring of some kind somewhere, not called an onion ring.
Sure. It's got to be something.
Yeah.
There's got to be a need for.
What I need is a 1 pound bag delivered to Michael's house.
Okay. Well, we can just get his address and get it
Saute
squared
those
up.
Nobody's getting my address.
No.
I know your address. It's fine.
No, you don't.
I know where you work Monday through Thursday.
He moved. Yeah. No, man, it's been super fun and like doing this, like kind of seeing the vertical integration. We've learned so much about the business as a whole just by having to go through that process. And
I bet.
It makes you realize how important each one of those levels is.
That fulfillment is two businesses in and of itself.
100%. And to do it in a way where, it just, you get to a certain volume where you can't.
Yeah.
And once we tried so our whole thing was, it obviously takes, a fair amount of time to get cattle ready to where you're processing them. My biggest thing was, how do you have a customer base standing by prior to that so that you're moving through that product?
Yeah.
The kind of the saying in beef is you either sell it or you smell it. So once it's in the freezer,
Yeah, it's not going anywhere.
it's not going anywhere. And so we had done a good job of building a customer base so that when we had product, we had people ready to buy.
Yeah.
However, we were not prepared for the fulfillment side of what that took trying to do that on our own. And we did it for a bit and then quickly realized we needed to find a professional
Yeah, find a
specialist. And then also shipping from Montana is super expensive.
We are kind of in the middle of fucking nowhere.
Middle of
You
nowhere.
specifically, your ranch is in the middle of
It
fucking
is.
nowhere.
And so now we have people on like those different coasts. It's centralized. We can get stuff to people super easy. And then working with those partners, it's been great because let them handle that. We focus now on putting like the best quality beef we can in the package, on developing, the females that come back into our program that we sell in other people's programs, and really just focusing on building out that consistency. And that's the biggest thing. I mean, there's a lot of people, online that like this, you know how it is. They like to go, oh yeah, we do the same thing. And yeah, we do this, but and they're not being entirely accurate about how that looks. And when you actually do a true start to finish program, you quickly realize that each one of those phase lines is like, I talk about this bunch, like it's, the links in the chain, it goes both ways, right? So like if you could put the best cattle ever in steaks in the freezer. If you don't have customers to buy it, it doesn't matter. Or you could have too many customers and not enough cattle, and then there's a disparity there, right? And you quickly realize that in this, you have to, especially for us, part of that local, process is the fact that like you have to have committed partners that are going to, buy and use your product. And ultimately what we learned on that end is like, you have to have quality and consistency. You can't have it 1 month and then not the next month, right? Even people online, like they'll go someplace else. And when you're competing against these really large Cisco's, US Foods.
You're a click away from your competition now.
100%.
It's not a drive to a different store.
No.
You're just,
I'll go somewhere else.
Forgotten. Never to return.
Yep. And so your customer acquisition costs, right? Like, and that's why you start, and it's funny. Like, it's kind of one of those things where sometimes it's annoying, but other times you're like, you see people out there like literally just word for word copying what you're saying and doing.
It's okay. It's
actually great because you're going like, hey, you're doing something right. And as long as you can keep those and you realize that your consistency is going to be a lot different than somebody else's because you've put that much like time, effort, and thought into it. And that's something similar to, making like special ops, right? Where you go, oh, we need more guys, we need more SEALs, we need more of this, right? And if you don't have the bonus, then you're never going to get them. But no different than as you start to increase in quantity, you can't have a slip in quality. A lot of companies make a big mistake in the beef side where they've got a really good product and then basically that product gets diluted because they try to fill something that they can't. And we've been really strategic about how we've built that out to the point where we're like, hey, we're not taking more customers, until this point, right? And that's all, again, like all it takes is one bad cup of coffee, right? Like one bad experience. Yeah. And
on to the next.
Next one.
Never to come back.
Yep.
What do you want to close it out with? I'll get you back on the road back to Bozeman. We've been out for 2.5 hours.
One thing I do, other than your opening today, your cold bore with Jimmy Watson was...
What we opened with? I don't remember.
His dick getting stuck in the belt sander.
I'm not going to say who gave me the beta on that. You know what I mean? So
I know that. And I did confess to him after that.
He was like, how in the fuck did you know that? Like, small world, dude. Small world. And also, how many stories of people getting their dick stuck in a belt sander are there?
Zero. And you said to me, you were like, I'm opening with that. What I thought was so great was like, like you guys had met, with a little bit of friction.
Contentiously, for sure, yeah.
And that started it off for such a great conversation.
Yeah, he and I were totally
no, amazing.
Yeah.
No, but it was such a great, it was almost like this, not like, but like it just started with such a great, and then you guys that was an amazing podcast. And that was the funniest because you were like, you told me that. I was like thinking afterwards, I'm like, there's no way he's coming out hot with that.
No, straight out with
it. And it was actually funny. I found the picture of him with the t-shirt that we had got him. Yeah. And I sent it to him and he was like, this is fantastic. But anyway, I had to tell you.
Nearly an unbelievable story.
Insane.
Yeah.
Insane story.
Yeah.
It was crazy, just crazy.
For people who are interested, go back to the episode with Jimmy Watson. We open with it.
Yeah,
you're welcome.
And Jimmy and I were at STVs together, and for a number of years, and worked together. And I'm super happy to see like how well he's doing. And
he probably didn't fit well into an STV.
No, he's a big boy.
He's a big boy. Yeah,
he's a real big boy. And like I said, they don't have any. They don't give you any.
It's like a compression sack. You get it in there.
You'll get it in there. Don't worry. Don't worry. And that's for the seating of the amount of time, But no, that was great. I did have to mention that to you because that was. I love the fact.
I forgot you were the one who gave me that beta.
I love the fact that you just fired right out of the gate with that, and then he was like, "What?" And that was like, I do that story. I'll never forget when that doctor's like, "How was it a?" Whatever, like 3/16 or a half. And he's like, doesn't matter. And I remember him telling me the story right after. And I'm like, that is really funny that the guy asked you that.
But also, was it a 3/16 or?
I don't, he never actually answered that, to be honest. But yeah, that shit was great. But no, other than that, thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, where can people buy your stuff?
Yeah, so you can get our stuff. Go to www.littlebeltcattleco.com. You can find us on Instagram.
Do you sell pink cups and sweatshirts?
We do.
Perfect.
We do. The notorious pink hoodie is on there. We sell coffee cups still. We actually, a lot of people came out in support and we're buying those like crazy. So what was really funny was their ploy actually helped us out.
Sales.
Yeah, yeah, it was great.
Net sale bump. Nice.
We made a lot of jokes out of it and that was pretty entertaining. I wanted to keep that ball rolling, but my wife was like, this has run its course. And
it might be better for him if you let it go a little bit too.
Yeah. And we
after he won, it's kind of like that's the best fuck you anyway.
That was the greatest, like for all of it, right? And but yeah, no, we got great merch. We got t-shirts. We got sweatshirts. We got. It's funny. Last time I was on, it kind of happened again. But like, I came home. My wife works for the company and does a lot of our marketing and whatever. And she's like, you didn't talk about Little Belt until like the last 5 minutes. You and Andy just talked about like SEAL team shit.
Yeah, we just did that again. Sorry.
Yeah. And I was like, and she's like, you didn't even wear. I was like, so this time I was like, all right, I got a hat on, I got a sweatshirt on.
Yeah.
And then we can talk about stuff. And, But no, check us out, and we super appreciate everybody that supported us through the whole deal. We're really looking forward to doing this deal with Black Rifle, and just getting more access out there, and just getting our word out there. And again, if you're supporting U.S. producers, you're helping keep that system going, and it's really important right now. And I think it's even being highlighted more, with these different tariffs and different things, and the ability for America to continue to feed its citizens, right, is super important, and we just feel super proud to be playing a very small role in that, and just doing the best job we can to do it right.
Cool. Right on, man.
Hell yeah.
Later.
Thanks.